Long ghosts whisper through the trees, cold winds carrying their pleas. Lives ended, stories untold, a heart of stone, a grip gone cold. They said it was him, they swore it was clear, blonde hair like smoke, the devil near. They said it was him, they swore it was clear, blonde hair like smoke, the devil near, a heart of stone, a grip gone cold. Long ghosts whisper through the trees, cold winds carrying their pleas. Lives ended, stories untold. They said it was him, they swore it was clear, blonde hair like smoke, the devil near. They said it was him, they swore it was clear, blonde hair like smoke, the devil near.
Yeah, well, good evening, all. Welcome. We finally made it. We're the technically challenged. If nothing else, give me 2 seconds, and I will embiggen myself so that you can all see.
I like to identify as technologically capable, but that doesn't really work.
Well, my subscribers know exactly how technically challenged that I am, and hopefully they're forgiving. There we go. Hopefully you can all see and hear me. Good morning, Miss Tricia. Can you give me a thumbs up and let me know that you've got good visual and sound, please, before we get started. So, good evening. Thank you and welcome to the Defence Rests. I have with me none other than the Mr. Paul Motor from the WASP Files, who has been the guru as far as Port Arthur and Martin Bryant and the entire investigation story goes in every narrative that is presented. So thank you for joining us today, Paul.
Welcome, thank you.
We have a bit of we've had some technological issues. We've had to join in via Zoom, so it should work, but it only goes for 45 minutes. So we've got an extra stream set up ready to jump across to. So bear with us, all right? Okay, now today is the 30th anniversary of the Port Arthur Massacre, and you did a beautiful tribute today, Paul, an absolutely beautiful tribute to the families and the victims and the first responders, because it affected not just them, it affected the entirety of Australia, really, didn't it? It changed us as a nation.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's very easy to overlook a lot of the people that were left behind, and that does include the first responders and the police. They often get demonised for their actions, but I've always been a supporter of the police.
Yeah, well,
because they're usually the first ones that have to deal with a lot of the trauma, and basically step in there, or sometimes not knowing what they're going to face.
they don't often have a
And
choice,
that's
do they?
certainly the case with a lot of medical staff as well.
Yeah.
This was an unprecedented crime,
And still is.
and it was horrendous for all these people to see this.
Could you imagine walking into that cafe or even being in there? Just
Well, I've heard stories when I was speaking to Wendy Skua, who courageously performed triage on a lot of those victims for hours on end. And some of the things that she described were horrendous. I've had other people, I won't go into detail, but I've had a lot of people say that it was literally like a war zone.
yeah.
Just carnage. And unfortunately, there was quite a delay before the police arrived en masse.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some constables that arrived by helicopter, and they were just inundated with frightened and panicked tourists who were just terrified. There were hundreds of people there, and they were sort of overwhelmed. And a few ambulances came through, but it was a long time before all of the powers that be just converged on the Port Arthur historic site en masse. And by then, Wendy and a lot of other people had experienced very extreme PTSD. By her own account, she was covered in blood and just calling for help, saying, "Where is everyone? Where is everyone?"
I remember her saying that she triaged someone wrong, thinking that, was it Graham, the one that was shot in the neck, and she triaged him and he actually survived, and she really had a lot of guilt towards it. Was it Graham that was shot in the neck? Who was it?
Yeah, Graham.
Yeah.
Graham is a friend of mine, and he was lying there. In essence, he'd taken a bullet in the throat. He very courageously turned to try and save his loved ones and push them out of harm's way. And when he turned back, he took a bullet in the throat, and he lay on the ground drowning in his own blood, pretending to be dead, and watching the gunman the whole time from the floor. And in the aftermath, after the gunman had departed, people just thought he was dead. He'd lost that much blood, and he was obviously pale as a ghost. And so people were attending to other people, and then he sort of made movements so that people realised he was still alive. And up till then, people just assumed he was dead. He's a remarkable man. He'd lost so much blood and was taken to the hospital. By his own accounts to me, he was put in a room and he was in there for hours without treatment. And his impression was that they put him in there to die.
Oh.
So he somehow got himself up and checked himself out of hospital.
You're joking.
Incredible. Yeah, he's to survive something like that. The bullet went through his throat, came out the back of his neck and blew his teeth out. And just, I can't imagine how he just had that will to survive. And
where did he go to get treatment?
And a very good friend.
Where on earth did he go to get treatment if he checked himself out of the hospital?
Well, they took them all into the Hobart Hospital. There was a mass influx of trauma victims, obviously. So they were all initially treated, and they would have been given emergency triage to stem the flow of blood and replace fluids and deal with injuries and so on. But he did recall that he was in there for quite a while. So they probably got him stable.
Yep.
But he just had this impression that he was just kind of left there. And at some point he said he checked himself out. So I'm not sure how that transpired, but a very tough individual, Graham Collier.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get back to him.
And of course his statement, because what he'd written down, but what he told me quite specifically was that he had watched the gunman enter the cafe from the word go. He said he was struck by his, what he said was a military bearing about this individual, but that he had this long blonde hair. And he found that quite unusual. And he said, I watched the person do a traverse of the entire cafe, how he himself had been trained when he was in the RAF. And then he said that person disappeared, came back in. He did say that two other people had arrived with that blonde-haired person, and his impression was that they had come together as a group. But they separated at some point, and the blonde-haired individual came back in, started shooting, and that's when Graham was shot. He was within spitting distance of the shooter, and he stated that the shooter was not Martin Bryant.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
I asked him, "Are you sure?" He said 100%.
And
Never
what does he
been
have to
called
gain from that?
Only in court, never interviewed on shows like the ABC's. I was actually there, and he was a first-hand witness.
Yep. And why would you say that if someone has just shot you in the neck? There's nothing to be gained from that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the shock, of course, to try and survive it, and even not knowing what the hell had happened, but he was very aware that his life was in very serious danger because he was losing so much blood. My understanding was that when they treated him, when they realised he was alive, they were using a straw to suck the blood out. He was trying to tell them that he needed to clear his throat and his mouth, and they were sucking the blood out with a straw.
With their mouths?
So, with a straw, yeah, to try and clear his clogged throat and mouth. I mean, it's just... And I've heard a lot of other stories. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail given the trauma of the day. But his loss, as well as everyone else that survived that day, is profound.
Because he lost his wife too, didn't he?
And the loved ones that had been taken so brutally, it just caused shockwaves throughout, certainly amongst the survivors, but throughout the whole of Australia and the rest of the world.
Did he lose his wife as well?
Occasion.
Did he lose his wife as well in the cafe? Was that?
That was Stephen Howard.
That's right.
He's another friend of mine. He was an employee at the Port Arthur Historic Site, and his wife, Elizabeth, a young wife. They'd just been recently married, and she was working behind the counter in the cafe, and she was killed. And Stephen entered the cafe trying to find her.
That's right, and you found them.
And he was interviewed on the WASP Files, and his testimony is heartfelt and quite distressing because he, of course, found Elizabeth, and he said, I didn't need to check to see if she was okay or in any way injured because he was, 100% sure that she was deceased. Stephen's a lovely man, and he's the survivors that are friends of mine have managed to move on with their life, and that's of great courage and temerity to them. Persistence, but they still are haunted by that, of course. And I've always felt personally that people should not be defined by the traumas that have affected them. But of course, very few of us ever experience that level of trauma and shock and PTSD.
Thankfully.
So, but these are two remarkable men, and it was my privilege to get to know them and to talk to them.
Now, he found his wife and a younger woman, is that right, were behind the counter of the cafe together. They were friends, is that?
There was the 17-year-old girl was Nicole Burgess,
right.
And she was the daughter of Sue Burgess, and she was working behind the counter as well, and she was killed as well. So these were all people that were known. They were Port Arthur Historic Site employees, and they all knew each other, and obviously had very, very vigorous jobs dealing with all the tourists. Stephen Howard used to run the ghost tours around Port Arthur.
I've actually done that.
Of course, they'd swap positions. They'd work at the toll booth, getting tickets and so on. So Stephen and Wendy Skua, who were both employees, were both adamant and strident in their calls for a coronial inquest into the Port Arthur massacre, specifically related to the issue of the fire exit door in the cafe, which had been nailed shut. And as a direct result of that, 6 people lost their lives because they couldn't get out the fire exit door. The government had stated that it was due to an inoperative lock, but that was a cover-up. And according to Wendy's personal testimony, her interviews on the WASP Files, the door had been nailed shut by a maintenance person to prevent theft from the gift shop. But that unfortunate reality should have mandated,
Yeah.
that alone should have
Yes.
mandated a coronial
Yes.
inquest, and that was denied to survivors like Wendy Skura and Stephen Howard.
I actually did a bit of a deep dive into that too, and I discovered, I don't know if it's true, but there was apparently the actual historic site had changed hands, like it had been purchased by another company, and they didn't have the level of insurance for the cafe, apparently, which is one of the reasons they nailed that door shut. Have you heard anything along those lines?
Not really,
No?
other than that I knew that because it was a fire exit door, it could be propped open, and sometimes people would sort of prop the door open with a lump of wood and go out and smoke cigarettes. But of course, anyone who could then prop the door open could then sneak into the gift shop and steal.
Yep.
Look, whether it was a reckless and foolish move to prevent theft or something more insidious, which has been suggested, it alone caused the deaths directly of 6 people who could have run out that door and escaped. And so that certainly is, a vital element of the call for a coronial inquest. And to not have one, even on that level, is, in my opinion, a travesty of justice.
It's a red flag for me. So Wild Aussie Woman and Teresia say good morning and welcome to you, Paul. Now, I might just do a quick little intro just so that to refresh people's, not that I really, it's something you want refreshed, but just a quick overview of what sort of happened that day. And I've got a forensic sort of timeline I'd like to work with you through. And I've done it in a comparative way. So I've done like the mainstream media on the left and then your evidence on the right to compare where they meet or don't, so to speak. So it was 30 years ago today, on the 28th of April in 1986, 96. On a quiet Sunday at Port Arthur, at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the peaceful serenity was shattered when a gunman used a military-style weapon to kill 20 people inside that Broadwater cafe. And they had been enjoying the company and refreshments of friends. He continued shooting outside, leaving 4 dead outside of the cafe. Then, leaving the Port Arthur historic site, commandeered a motor vehicle, drove up a short distance to the toll booth, where more people lost their lives, and eventually driving to the Seascape Cottages, where the siege ensued afterwards, and commandeering a hostage on the way, and killing the female companion of his as well. And then at the Seascape, it was 18 hours, I think, the siege went for overnight until the early hours of the next morning, when the actual cottage was set alight and Martin Bryant was seen to come out on fire, with his clothes on fire, in black clothing, and that's where he was apprehended by the what is it, the SOGIes, you call them?
Special
SOGs.
Operations Group Police.
Okay.
SOGs.
Now, the Special Operations Groups were actually there's a lot of coincidences that happened around that weekend. The Special Operations Group were doing training exercises on the beach, I believe. There was the trauma surgeons convention at the Hobart Hospital, so the best trauma surgeons in Australia were convened there. There was the reporters, wasn't there a gaggle of reporters located nearby as well, on hand?
Over 700 international journalists had convened in Hobart for a conference. So they were from all over the world, and they were literally bussed into the site.
They trampled
700 journalists. You couldn't have asked for a greater media contingent if you tried.
No, but they didn't. They destroy the crime scene as well, pretty much.
They were escorted around the crime scene, but I can only assume that the police prevented them from actually trampling evidence. However, because the Port Arthur historic site, including the cafe, did not have the police attend in great numbers for some 6
Yeah.
hours after the shooting, which actually commenced at 1:32 p.m.
Yeah, they didn't arrive till 7:30.
People were trampling all over the crime scenes. They were going in to recover things like car keys. People were souveniring cases off the ground, and of course searching for loved ones. So there was no control over the crime scene for something like 6 hours. The police that had arrived en masse, and I'm talking about Special Operations Group from the mainland, water police, locals, of course, were kept at Tirana, and a barbecue was set up for them because it was considered to be too dangerous for them to attend the site.
Even with the SOGs.
A lot of people were left traumatized and frightened for something like 6 hours, trying to perform triage on victims and wondering where in hell the cavalry was, so to speak.
So were the SOGs held up at Tirana as well?
Yes, initially. And there was also SOGs that were brought in from the mainland, from Victoria and New South Wales. So whether they were setting up a command post at Tirana, I would have thought that the Special Operations Group police would be the spear point and would go in even into potentially dangerous situations, as opposed to leaving it unguarded, so to speak, for the rest of the survivors. But it took that long before, as Wendy Skirrick put it, they rolled in armed to the teeth. But by then, people were very traumatized and the crime scene was totally compromised. An interesting sort of anomaly was that once the gunmen had left the Port Arthur historic site and the siege had commenced at the Seascape Cottage, at between 7:30 and 7:45, somebody fired 3 shots at the Port Arthur historic site.
Oh.
And this was getting towards nightfall, and a ripple of panic went through the survivors. They thought, their first thought was the gunmen had returned.
Yeah.
And it's never really been ascertained who fired those shots or why. But the siege was undertaken at Seascape Cottage, some kilometres from there. So somebody fired 3 shots.
Do they know what weapon it was? Was it a shotgun or a...
There's no evidence, no sort of statement or official release in terms of what was fired, who fired it, for what purpose. It was witnessed and heard that 3 shots were fired at the Port Arthur historic site. I believe somewhere up near, I think it's called the Clelman's Cottage. It's an old historical cottage. I might have got that pronunciation wrong. But yeah, somewhere around the site, somebody fired some shots.
All right. I've just been notified we're running out of time, so we're going to have to skip to the second stream link. If that's all right, I will start that up and give you a minute to join, and I'll chatter away in the meantime. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. Hold fast. I'll start number 2. Bear with me. End of the meeting. Trying to combine 2 lots of technology, one that I'm absolutely not familiar with.
Recording in progress.
Way, okay. And the other one that I struggle with anyway has been record. If you stop, you can convert your recording later. Yeah, stop. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing, but whatever. Okay, so now I need to share the screen again. Bear with me. Share. Okay, so when he joins that meeting, which I have started, yes, that's all good. Oop, there's a chat there. No, there's not. I hate technology. I really do. He'll be with us shortly anyway. So it's the main issue, as Paul touched on just then, that there was no official nothing officially documented or released about the 3 shots that were fired at Port Arthur, and that has seemed to be one of the biggest issues that has brought up so many different opinions and questions, basically, from the general public. Now, we are not here at all to try and convince you otherwise or to convert your thoughts. Basically, my belief is that we are entitled to know the full extent of the truth, and here we go. And basically, that's my job. We're just going to present to you all of the facts that we can find, all of the facts that that make things questionable. There is a lot of things that. Here we go. He'll be in a sec. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. There's a lot of questions that still need to be answered, but unfortunately, the documents for the entire investigation have been locked away for another 75 years. They were actually due to be opened and released today, 30 years they were originally squashed for. But as soon as Paul started digging, because I'll start back at the start. So Paul is a movie producer, and he actually was going to do a documentary series on Port Arthur. Oh, I've got you. I can hear you. I just can't see you.
I'm up here. So it's showing that my video is active, so here I am.
I've got the voice, and I've got, it's like the voice from God of above. I just can't see you. Oh, there you go. All right. Shit hot. We've got another 45. Well, that worked. I was just giving a bit of a bio on you, Paul. Actually, probably best coming from you and how you started to investigate this, like, 10 plus years ago.
Yeah, back in 2016, I'm a film producer, and I was sort of shopping around for an idea to do for a feature film, and sort of thought about the Port Arthur Massacre, and thought that nobody had really ever touched that as a film concept.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was a major event that changed Australia, fundamentally for decades. And I just felt that that was as distressing and grim a topic as it was, that it would be a worthwhile cinematic endeavour.
Mm-hmm.
So I began researching the crime, and all I knew at the time was that Martin Bryant had gone down there with high-powered rifles and opened up Port Arthur. And like any good filmmaker, I began to research,
mm-hmm.
and not just what I read online, but dug very, very deeply, starting to contact the police, people that had been directly involved,
mm-hmm.
survivors, families, people who grew up with Martin, people who went to prison with him. And the more I dug, the more I just came to the conclusion that this doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to write the script from as factual a point of view as possible. I did not want this to be, just a gratuitous exploration. I wanted it to be respectful,
mm-hmm.
hard-hitting and factual. But the more I dug, I just went, I can't write this script. I don't have the facts. And then found out that sometime in 2018, Tahoe, which was the Tasmanian Archives Heritage Office, had released a video where they'd been tasked to get all of the files from Port Arthur, to digitise them and place them under the highest restrictive category, E75, Chief Commissioner's eyes only, for a further 75 years. And I just realised then that you, me, and everyone else would be
Won't
dead
be around
before that information would ever be released.
And why would you do that if there is nothing there to hide? Do you know what I mean? That was a massive red flag for me. Massive.
Well, of course, too, the other thing is that we never had an open trial.
Yep.
We never had a coronial inquest,
Yep.
which was mandated by state law, not federal law, and nor did we have a royal commission. So there were certainly enough answers there. This was principally because Martin Bryant, after holding a not guilty plea in in Risdon prison for something like 5 months, changed his plea to guilty, and it was like, okay, we don't need a trial.
What happened there?
And
there you go. Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Given consecutive life terms, and that was it. There was no need to call witnesses to tender evidence.
Well, you dropped out there for a second, just as you were saying.
You got me?
Just as you were saying, his guilty plea. But you're back again.
Yes, so as a result of the guilty plea, there was no need to convene a trial. And so he was thrown in jail for consecutive life terms. And as a result, the witnesses never had their say in court, and there were hundreds of those. Evidence wasn't tendered: forensics, ballistics, DNA, fingerprints, and of course, all the information has been locked down. So really, no one has access but the authorities to all of the hard evidence that would then determine 100% beyond reasonable doubt the identity of the killer, or the gunman or gunmen at the Port Arthur historic site and the Seascape Cottage.
Yep.
So look, I've covered a lot of this in the WASP files, and I've always said, look, I'm not here to, and we've got a problem with Zoom. Just going to fix that up. I've always said, look, I'm not here to trivialise the tragedy or to sensationalise Martin Bryant. I'm just here to ask questions.
Correct.
And to also educate people on what they don't know about the Port Arthur Massacre. And there is a ton. The media have not been at all transparent in looking into a balanced way into this tragedy. And everyone's just taken the approach, yep, that's black and white. It's not black and white. No,
nothing's black and white. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Now,
so to this day, and it's not even of my own intentions, there are many, many people, tens of thousands of Australians who sit there going, no, this doesn't add up. And they want answers they can't get.
The thing that I was thinking about today too, like, I mean, I was around and witnessed the Port Arthur Massacre as an Australian at the time, and back in 1996, we didn't have the technology at our fingertips and the abilities to research the depths that we do now, and that for what we can actually find out that isn't hidden, basically, or hidden away in all the files, there is enough there for you to start asking questions on the actual ability, both physically and mentally, of Martin to be able to do this heinous thing. You know, nothing makes sense, and nothing is like, he was basically, his IQ is 66, which is actually an intellectual disability. Now, he had the mental capacity of a 10-year-old child, and he was also illiterate, and the depths of planning that are needed to pull off something of this magnitude is beyond me, how someone with that intellectual capacity can actually perform that, as well as allegedly set up this siege as well. And, you know, it's beyond me. And for one person as well. Your thoughts?
Look, it's an astounding feat for any one man to achieve. And if you take a lot of people to say, look, it was close range, you had a semi-automatic AR-15 style rifle, that it was like shooting proverbial fish in a barrel. When you consider the scale of the assault, multiple occasions, the ability to think on your feet, to improvise, to avoid apprehension, to then commandeer vehicles, kidnap hostages, preset a stage location for a siege, decoy the only two police that were nearby the Port Arthur historic site to the other side of the island prior to the shooting on a wild goose chase, which turned out to be false drugs. I mean, that's all pretty clever for someone with a very low IQ.
Absolutely.
There were survivors that stated that the shooter was remarkably methodical and professional. Survivor Neville Quinn who was shot in the neck and survived, stated that, quote, he was the best trained army man I've ever seen. His stance was unbelievable. Other people said when he was pirouetting with the rifle that it was like he was dancing. He would lift the barrel to avoid anyone being able to apprehend him and then choose a target. A lot of headshots, and even at close range, people say, "Oh yeah, it's one thing to be able to shoot birds with slug guns and to shoot targets, but engaging live human targets in a traumatic, frightening situation, the adrenaline rush." This all has to be taken into account.
Absolutely.
And I don't personally think Martin Bryant was capable of that kind of activity.
I completely agree. And just to touch on that gun again, so they allege that it's an AR-15 semi-automatic weapon that was used in the cafe. Now, the witnesses have stated that the gunman held the gun at right hip height, which would then obviously be equivalent to head height for people seated in that cafe. And then you go to the interview with the police with Martin, who then show him or hand him the gun, and he immediately puts it up to his left shoulder because he's left-handed. So he denies ever shooting from the hip, has no idea about it. So, and the way that the AR-15 is designed, the actual cartridge discharge is at the base on the right-hand side of the barrel, so that if he was holding it to his left shoulder, he would be copping all of the empty cartridges, the shells, the debris, and would more than likely have had some minor burns to his face. And I'm getting echo.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of crackle from you. Do I sound clear?
No.
Okay, we've got that same problem we had before with the distorted audio. So that just come on. I don't know why.
No. Your picture's better though. Look, we'll get.
Yeah, I guess the system's trying to fight between video and audio, but it's I don't know what's causing this. I've had this issue before. So
Yeah.
The only thing to do is to kick out and kick back in again, but it's frustrating.
Yes. Did you want to have a go at that, or do you want me to try and
Yeah, this is a bit difficult to communicate, so I guess we're going to have to reschedule very quickly another meeting and hope that the audio visual's fine.
All right, I shall do that right now. All right. Bear with me, people. Bear with me. Let me get back into Zoom. Where is it? Oh, shit. Where did that go? Oh. All right. I'm going to remove you off the screen here and start afresh.
I'm just going to close down a few open links to see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, exit from this one and I'll start a fresh one.
Okay, signing off now. Sorry about this, guys.
No problem. All good. All right. Hey, Tan. We're on our third stream from Zoom, so give me 2 minutes and I'll put a nice little song on whilst I set up this next meeting, and I'll be right with you. Media assets. Let's have a look. Have a listen to this one. I'll be right back.
In the hollow where the shadows fall, we gather round, we hear the call. Liquid fire from the mountain's head burns like truth, but it tastes like sand. Oh, it sure feels right at the end of the day. Drink it up, let the story stay. The creek laughs low, the fire cracks loud. We lose ourselves in a moonlit crowd. So thick it hums and sings, a slow dance wrapped in unseen strings, clear as glass, but it bites like a snake, sharp and cold, every breath we take. Oh, the stars know our sins tonight. Let that burn till the world spins right. The creek laughs low, the fire cracks loud. We lose ourselves in a moonlit crowd. Secrets deep, the kind you tell, the kind you keep. Ashes rise like ghosts in flight, fading fast into the night. Oh, it sure feels right at the end of the day. Drink it up, cracks loud. We lose ourselves in a moonlit crowd. In the hollow where the shadows fall, we gather round, we hear the call. Liquid fire from the mountain's head burns like truth, but it tastes like sand. Oh, it sure feels right at the end of the day. Drink it up, let the story stay. The creek laughs low, the fire cracks loud. We lose ourselves in a moonlit crowd. So thick it hums and sings, a slow dance wrapped in unseen strings.
Okay, my apologies. I got kicked right out of Zoom and had to go right the way back in. So I've just sent Paul the link again. Hopefully he gets that. I just got a message from, okay, hang on. Bear with me. I hate technology. Oh, good. He found it. Excellent. Hopefully all my audio settings are all okay. Yep. Speaker's right. Output. That's done. Can you all still hear me? Okay. Come on. He's coming. He's coming. Same system. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Tricia. It's stupid. If you've got a Zoom, just the basic Zoom, there we go. It only allows you to use it for 45 minutes, which is ridiculous. So that's why we had to create a couple, and it is what it is. Here he comes. So we won't. Hello, can you hear me?
This is still pretty bad. I can hear you, but it's so croaky and terrible.
It is. Let me try the audio on this end.
I know what's causing it. I'm going to sign out and try and come in on my phone again too.
Okay. It's extremely frustrating, unfortunately. But what do you do? So I will just keep telling our story. So let me go back to okay, so we have a timeline basically.
Okay, that's better for me.
Oh, yes. Beautiful.
Much better.
Oh, Lord. Hallelujah.
Right, good news.
That's 100% better picture too. Good job. Thanks, Paul. All right.
Let's go while the
Yes,
run
yes,
is hot.
correct. All right. So my comprehensive timeline, basically. So the narrative is 6 a.m. Martin sets his alarm clock off, as which is unusual for him. I don't believe this for a second, but and I actually think Petra might be in on that one. His girlfriend, just quietly, but yeah. So yeah, should they get up, shower together, have breakfast? She leaves at 8, and then between 8 and 9:47, Bryant drinks from a bottle of Sambuca, apparently, whilst he's collecting his arsenal: 2 semi-automatic guns and a shotgun, handcuffs, rope, and a hunting knife, significant quantity of ammunition, and a sports bag that Petra saw him buy, and obviously his passport. And then he sets his security alarm at 9:47. Now, he's living in a property. Is that one that he's purchased from his inheritance, or is this
That was the property that was owned by Helen Harvey
Helen? Okay.
at 30 Claret Street in Newtown.
That's the one they lived together at prior to her car accident.
I don't think they actually lived together. Martin basically visited her quite a lot, spent a lot of time with her, helping her look after her plethora of pets and animals.
The 40
But I don't
cats.
think he ever stayed there. He may have stayed overnight. They weren't intimate together. They
No,
were
no,
friends. She was
no.
an older lady.
I was under the impression that he spent a lot of time over there, and that was my assumption. My apologies. I thought because it was a big home too, wasn't it?
After she had passed away, yeah, he lived at 30 Clare Street in Newtown, if that's what you mean.
Yeah. All right. While we're on Helen, I'll just touch on that. So Helen and Martin developed a friendship. They were sort of both very sort of eccentric characters, you could say. Now Helen was the sole heir to the Tattersalls' fortune, and a girlfriend and I did a bit of a deep dive into following that money. Which, Tan, whilst you're here, I will wait till we're finished with Paul and then come up and we'll do that afterwards, because I've only got a limited time with him. So we'll touch on that afterwards, okay?
Just a quick one. She wasn't the sole heir. There were many heirs to the Tattersalls' fortune, but she was a direct blood descendant heir. So she was, of course, entitled to quite a substantial amount of money, but there were, I believe there were quite a few heirs to that fortune.
I think she was the only heir from her mother, but the actual the what do you call them? There was like a cut. I can't think of the words.
Consortium?
No. It was to do with the income stream from. No, it's gone. I can't do it. No, sorry.
Let's move on.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Tanya, we'll touch on it later. But yeah, it was another component which had more people attached to it. Anyway, good morning, Uta Hef. You've came in right at the good bit. There, Jodi's brain goes dead. Right, so where are we? So he departs in his yellow Volvo. With the
talking about the inheritance and Helen Harvey, and that they were both eccentric characters, and that she had died under somewhat mysterious circumstances.
He sort of got blamed for that too.
Together.
He sort of got blamed for that too, didn't he? It was said.
Look, there was accusations that it was in essence that he'd murdered her. He did have a propensity for pulling down on the wheel of the vehicle when they were driving, and Helen had complained about this and said, "One day that little bastard's going to kill me."
So he had done it.
Stupid and reckless. As that activity may have been, in my opinion, doesn't constitute murder.
No.
Martin himself was severely injured in that crash.
Yes.
And very serious injuries to his neck and so on. He could have just as easily been killed. So perhaps whether they were playing stupid road games or, I'm not sure, but I think the media was sort of like, Martin Bryant may have killed before. They just leapt upon that in their typical tabloid fashion. The same with the death of Martin's father, Maurice. Who
that was terribly sad.
Suicide.
That was sad.
He had drowned himself and he had Martin's diver's belt around his neck. So, of course, the media jumped upon that as well and were claiming that he may have killed before. However, it's quite clear that Maurice had gotten his financial affairs in order, transferring things into his wife's name, etc. And he did have a very a medicated depression condition. He had rung Lindy the night before his death and asked her if she thought he'd been a good father.
Aww.
And when he was found in the dam, he did have Xanax in his pocket. So in essence, it was highly likely it was a suicide. Martin was witnessed kind of being all excitable and frivolous, and people took that as a sign that he was guilty, or that he didn't care that his father had died. I did speak to a friend who grew up with Martin, and because of whatever condition he may have had, which may have been a sort of an Asperger's type condition, that he would sort of, if he was stressed or upset, he would giggle and kind of be frivolous and laugh. That was the way he would respond. I got that firsthand from someone who grew up with him.
Yeah.
So Maurice was found drowned, and he'd left some money for Martin.
Yes, that's right. He had left an inheritance for Martin. And that to me just goes more to the point of his mental capacity and age. He's giggling because he's got the capacity of a child still and doesn't know how to react. It's an adult feeling that he's having and doesn't know what to do with it. So, and that's something that he got heavily criticized for in the police interviews as well. The way he responded, it was like he was called heartless because he laughed. But looking at it from because I've got a lot of medical training, it's more to me a response to obviously the stress of the situation and his mental capacity. It seemed natural for me looking at him. Do you know what I mean? At that age, if you envision him as a 10-year-old, that's the response you would get. Yeah.
Look, it's one of those things. I've read all of the psych reports, and they are available online on the WASP Files. But I guess I try not to sort of lock anything down, but I'm all about asking questions. And, the character of Martin Bryant is an enigma. There are obviously questions that need to be determined. What was his mental state? Did he have dual personality? Was there like little boy Martin and cold-blooded killer Martin?
Yep.
Was he a sociopath? I mean, he's never been diagnosed as being sociopathic or psychopathic.
No.
And you go, well, okay, so someone that's cold and callous and can shoot children and women is a psychopath. But the psych reports are very nebulous, and some say he had schizophrenia, some say he didn't. He was on medication for schizophrenia. The whole thing is very ambiguous.
I didn't think he was.
And so, I don't want to assume a lot. I just want answers to the questions.
Yes. Yep.
He needs to be, in my opinion, forensically reevaluated independently by an unbiased psychiatric team. He needs to be questioned in depth, from an independent body, so that we can get some of these answers. No one has heard from his lips firsthand. Yes, I did it. I killed everyone. I liked it. Whatever.
No.
It's never been, people often point to the section in the video where Martin says, I hope you find the person responsible for all this, and then points to himself and mouths me. And they say, there, he's just confessed to murder.
No.
That is not a confession to murder.
No.
For all we know, if this person thought that he was part of some counter-terrorism exercise, that he was the main man, as he called himself at Seascape, that he was the person at the centre of it all, certainly playing upon that notion that Martin wanted to consider himself the centre of attention, an important man, a well-regarded person, which people didn't. These are all just questions. I'm no expert. But in my opinion, neither are the so-called experts that were being trotted out to, comprehensively condemn him and his character.
That were hired by the defence, his own defence attorney. We've got a question for you from Brian. Did the doctors warn he had homicidal ideations before the event?
According to Paul E. Mullen, who is Australia's expert on mass killing, they trot him out every time there's a trauma. He was in New Zealand when David Gray opened up on the local community there. He was also involved with Julian Knight at Hoddle Street. And he was claiming that Martin, in essence, had confessed, a suicidal urge that he'd basically had no reason to live and wanted to go out in a blaze of glory. And that he'd expressed, a desire to shoot people. I have heard those comments. I trust nothing that Pauline Mullen says. That's my prerogative.
He is a pompous git.
But, of course, he was asked a question by one of the 60 Minutes reporters and said, was he mad? And his answer was, no, he wasn't mad, but the act made him mad, which I thought was just a ludicrous statement for a psychologist or a psychiatrist to make. So, look, I will state certainly by a lot of reports, Martin had aggressive tendencies, antisocial tendencies, could act in a way that could be considered to be dangerous to schoolmates and so on, like coming up and jumping on the back of their necks. And I had a friend very much like that I grew up with, that was very reckless and to the point of being almost a little bit dangerous.
He just didn't have any social...
To answer your question, I don't comprehensively think there has been any concrete determination that he was psychopathic and that had a desire to shoot people. Could be wrong, but it's not been determined.
No, and Paul Mullen, in his interview on 60 Minutes, was, he's a dim boy, a good-looking dim boy. Like, okay, idiot. Anyway.
Well, to play devil's advocate, we could say, look, Martin Bryant had significant psychological issues and impairment and a low IQ.
Absolutely.
And perhaps he felt that he'd reached a point where he did want to do those acts. But I think you need a very, very ironclad forensic evaluation of that situation to be able to determine that. And I believe he'd been cross-examined in court in an open trial, you would have got some of those
Absolutely,
answers, but
yes.
we never had that.
Mm. And
That interview with Warren Payne is the only interview that's ever been released publicly, and even then, we're only ever showed little snippets
Yes.
from that interview.
Yeah. Yep.
So, can anyone comprehensively say they know what Martin Bryant's character is?
Nope.
The answer is no. And I've spoken to everyone, inmates who've spent
Yeah.
time with him in prison,
Yes.
kids who grew up with him, and they all describe someone that's very gentle,
Yes.
very softly spoken, frightened.
Yes.
In prison, he's a frightened little boy. And it just seems to be incongruous with this cold, calculating killer.
He's not displayed any anger or violence whilst that's been reported in Risdon, has he, to other inmates or anything?
I've had some reports that he had attacked guards. I've had a lot of interactions with some of the people that worked at the Risdon prison, which is a black hole of a prison.
Oh.
It's a very corrupt and dangerous place, and there are some guards there. Look, there are great guards. There are people that care about the inmates, and there are the other kind who are brutal.
Oh, yes.
Who would, and just one of those guards that just come on the media and said that Martin would provide sexual favours for chocolates. I was told by an inmate that was rubbish. And then I heard stories about that particular guard, that he was quite brutal himself. I've heard some very horrible things about Risdon. It had its own coronial inquest in relation to the deaths of inmates and the lack of resources. 2 days ago, there was a protest out the front of that prison.
Really?
Protesting the inordinate lockdowns where guards just couldn't be bothered showing up to work. So all they do is just keep the prisoners locked down for 23 hours a day. There are breaches of basic human rights in that prison. And some of the guards there, credible reports from next guard that the confession that Martin had provided was tortured out of him. And I don't mean, a bit of mistreatment. I mean torture, a protracted campaign of deliberate torture to break his spirit and to get him to confess. And that guard is interviewed on the WASP Files.
Yeah.
So that needs to be investigated.
Didn't they put him in solitary confinement for 30 days prior to that, before Avery, his defence attorney, went in and pretty much blackmailed him into his guilty plea?
Martin Bryant was kept in solitary confinement for very large amounts of time, for months at a time. He held a not guilty plea staunchly for 5 months.
Yep.
John Avery, who was supposedly his defence lawyer, had gone to his mother and said, look, you've got to get me to help change his plea to guilty. So Carleen Bryant confessed this in her book, My Story, that she went to the prison and said, unless you change your plea to guilty, you'll never see me or your sister Lindy again. Martin Bryant changes his plea to guilty, and it casts aspersions on that plea. But the more credible reports that I received, that the torture that he was subjected to was done by a cadre of ex-military guards. I have names. And that there were things like he would be tied to what they called the sorry pole, where he would be chained to a pole and beaten to a pulp, that he would wheeled into a hot shower, handcuffed to his wheelchair, and, quote, you could hear the screams through the cell block. He would have boiling soup poured down his throat. Look, whether you believe all this or not, there's enough testimony from guards, multiple ex-guards and people who worked at the prison, inmates, that suggest the brutality of that prison was positively penal colony, old school Tasmania. It needs to be investigated.
I'm actually
investigating. I've done that. I've launched formal civil investigations with no less than 6 government and institutions designed to protect Australia's basic human rights. And I was stonewalled the entire way.
Well,
you have no rights in Australia.
He's actually covered under the Australian Disability Act on top of his basic human rights as well, because of his intellectual disability. So he was entitled to have not only, the John Avery there present through all interrogations or interviews, but a guardian as well. And that guardian was then to make sure that they were to go over and over and over the information until they were satisfied that Martin actually understood what was happening, and all numerous amount of things that none of it actually happened. And if that actually happened in America today, he wouldn't have been in prison now for 30 years, just on the basic human rights infringements that he's incurred, and he doesn't know.
Well, I spoke to the Risdon Primary Health Services, which is the division which is there to ensure that prisoners' health and well-being is protected under their basic human rights under United Nations conventions. Very brusquely given the brush off there.
Yep.
I spoke to the prison inspector office, the custodial inspector's office, and they had implemented an inquiry into Risdon and found 147 breaches, apparently only 17 of which had been rectified. And they said, look, we don't have the authority to go and talk to a specific inmate. We can only adjudicate on the operational facility itself. Just, stonewalled, no jurisdiction. I went to the Australian Human Rights Commission, who will only operate on a federal level.
Yep.
Went to Amnesty International. They're only on an evaluation capacity. Just found that if you slip between the cracks in this country and you're in prison behind closed doors, you are in trouble, and there is no one you can talk to. I went to the Attorney General. I went to the Ombudsman. They're all toothless tigers.
The Department of Justice.
So it's guilty or innocent. Every Australian city
still has rights.
Is entitled to basic human rights. And people say, "Oh yeah, well, he deserves everything he got. Good on you. Hope he rots in hell." It's like, what if it was you?
Yeah. At
or
what?
A loved one.
Correct.
Or your sibling.
Correct.
Or your child.
Correct.
Would you still feel the same, or would you scream to the high heavens for justice? And
there is
easy to point figure.
There is a basic standard for that reason. There is a duty of care. There is a guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for a reason, and there is not even close to reasonable doubt in this that I've found at all. Not even close. Did you ever speak to the Department of Justice?
You want to go? Do you want more questions, or I'll be quiet for a second, just let you talk?
No, that's fine. There's another case that I'm actually studying or going over with the victims in Kentucky, and it's another jail, Letcher County Jail, that I think Risdon is the golden child in comparison to this and the atrocities that are there. But in that case, there is the option. We've been looking at the Department of Justice and putting in not a complaint, it's a specific motion that I can send you the info on. And if you can show, which I can, that there is a history, like a repetition of the events, and that the authorities in charge of your civil rights because you are incarcerated, that they knew of those things, then you actually have a case to put federally, basically. So, if you want any of that info later, we can talk upstream, but it might be an option that we can go down here for him.
Well, look, supposedly we're all under the United Nations conventions. You'll find quite distressingly that Tasmania is one of the few states in Australia where, in fact, the only state where they are not beholden to the United Nations conventions.
Really?
So they would not, for instance, would not, for instance, be required to allow access to the prison by any United Nations inspectors who were there to determine if there'd, for instance, been torture. It is apparently there are moves underway to change that sort of approach and to try and, in essence, rehabilitate the operation of Tasmania's only prison. But in the meantime,
30 years down the track,
and the Australian organisations. Yeah. I mean, I feel we're sort of getting a little bit off track because once again, it's about. I do want to think today is about the people that we lost, and so I don't want to discount that at all. I don't want to put my hands up in the air and say I'm an activist and free Martin Bryant. It's more about just trying to get the answers and educate people on what they don't know about Port Arthur.
Yep.
But it's very important to also, I've been talking about to use this occasion, which is the 30-year anniversary, as a marker, and all the preceding markers that have come to really reevaluate who we are as a people and as a country, and how we're governed, whether our human rights are sacrosanct. We've seen these stripped away, rights of freedom of speech, where you can be charged for offending somebody, rights of freedom of movement under the draconian lockdowns that we experienced. Human rights have just taken a back seat in what is supposedly one of the most free, democratic and lucky countries on the planet. And we are simply beholden to a lot of foreign interests that don't seem to be in Australia's instance. Benefits. And of course, people are starting to get upset at this and wake up and go, something's wrong. Our government is not looking after us. They're selling off all our assets, and there's a distinct lack of transparency and accountability. You try and get answers for freedom of information, and you're snowballed. So something's desperately wrong, and Port Arthur is a time for us to say, enough. We need to stand up against tyranny, in essence, and you can hold whatever view about the government's potential involvement in the Port Arthur massacre that you like. But the fact remains that now with Bondi as well, we can see what's going on, and we've been told it's a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. These people work for us, not the other way around. We should have answers, require them. It can be done very, without being gratuitous or exploitative. But we need the answers to Port Arthur. We need the answers to a lot of things that have gone wrong with Australia. It's time.
I don't even think the transparency issue, yes, it's better, but in what I'm finding, because I cover a lot of American cases where they do have the transparency, that they're actually the justice system is now reverting to the plea deals because they don't want things to go to trial to expose them, and that's how they get around it, the transparency issues there. So it's like, what do you do?
What I was told was, look, if you have a minor sort of offence, a traffic offence or something, go to court, represent yourself. You'll learn a lot about how the system works. Research, you can do all the legislation online. If you get charged with a serious crime, get the best lawyer money can buy. Anyone who wants to look up the statistics, particularly in America, will find the very high percentage, I think it's something like 30% of people in jail, odds are that they shouldn't be in jail. And the only difference was they were uneducated or impoverished and couldn't afford a good lawyer and found themselves railroaded by the system and shouldn't be in jail. There have been classic cases with the Guildford Six, the hurricane who was jailed back in the 60s. So there's a lot of incidences where the wheels of justice either come off the rails or they're greased or they are not, somebody misses the train as it goes by and people slip between the cracks. So this is where no one's going to look after you. You have to be very, very canny and clever and look after yourself to understand what your rights are. And don't just assume that the government will look after you and the magistrates are all, pristine and above questioning. They are just people. And there are some bad apples amongst the whole thing, even the police. I respect the police. I support the police. The majority of them are fantastic. There are, of course, some bad apples, some criminals and corruption. Certainly in Tasmania, I certainly have not a lot of knowledge about that. But we try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I'll just say, self-empower. Empower yourself.
Knowledge is power.
One of my favourite sayings is, don't be the last man standing at Kabul airport. Oh, don't worry, the planes will fly us out before the Taliban take over, and then people are clinging with their life to the wheels of the plane and falling to their deaths. They will not help you. You have to be strong enough, have some steel in you, have the acumen, have the enlightened mind to look after yourself and just know that what you see on 60 Minutes isn't the truth. And what the government tells you is more often than not a lie.
Do you know anything about Sandy Hook by chance?
Yeah, I looked quite in depth into Sandy Hook.
There's a question
very
from...
mysterious.
Sorry?
Obviously, there's a lot of outrage about good old Alex Jones, denying that it was, that it had actually occurred and that it was a false flag operation. One of the most telling things I saw was a very powerful, something like a 3-hour documentary that had a whole cadre of authentic media personalities that had taken each individual aspect of the Sandy Hook crime and investigation and anonymously pulled it to pieces and evaluated it. To me, it seems very, very clear that once again, that tragedy was not as reported. There were some very odd things with that. I don't want to go into too much detail. It's another crime. And I certainly don't think that every mass shooting crime is a false flag. But I would wager that a significant amount of them are to, in essence, enact a higher agenda. People kind of say, "Oh, look, why would the Australian government kill men, women, and children just for gun control?" And I sort of say, you're right. It's too simple a motive.
Mhm.
But anyone who studies history, and if you don't, you should, going back centuries, the oldest motivators in the book: power, money, influence, and control.
Mm.
There are always people that benefit from trauma.
Yeah.
And this has motivated people. Greed is the virus that rules the world. And you can go back centuries and you can look at things like the Reichstag fire that the Nazis blamed on the communists prior to World War II. These are false flags that were established to implement an agenda. 9/11, suddenly you had the US authorities could seize offshore funding. They could hold people without trial for longer periods of time. Unprecedented levels of surveillance on the population. Power, money, influence, and control. And if you think your governments are paragons of virtue, study history.
Oh, no.
See,
No.
see the amount of governments that have disarmed their civilian populations and then murdered them in their millions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fact.
Yep.
It's not conspiracy at all.
No.
It's a fact.
No. And it's happening today. It still happens today.
So I'm trying to calm down.
No. It still happens today.
You talk. Go ahead. What else do you want to know?
Very much. You sound very similar to what is actually happening right now in Kentucky, right now, this minute. People dying, people being manipulated, people being controlled, have been controlled for 60 years under, don't start me. We've got 7 minutes to go, Paul. So the question that actually came up from one of the in chat was, where did it go? Alex Jones, of course, alleges the same motive for Sandy Hook, and you guys allege for Port Arthur. How is it any different? In both cases, it's alleged without evidence that the purporter is actually a victim.
I don't allege anything. As I said, I'm here to educate people on what they don't know about Port Arthur. You don't have to take my word for it. Everyone has to make up their own minds. What I will say is do your research.
Yes.
I've spent 10 years digging deep into this. I'm still doing it.
Yep.
And it isn't just what I read online, read a book by Joe Viles or anyone else.
Nope.
I'm here to ask the questions. There is nothing wrong with asking questions. And it's, of course, people shut that down by calling you a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearer or a cooker. You can shove those appellations where the sun don't shine.
100%.
Where I'm asking questions because there's no answers.
No.
And then if I'm given the answers, if they release all of the hard evidence, the DNA and the videotape that the gunman supposedly took inside the Broad Arrow Cafe, which has never seen the light of day, it says, look, there's it's him doing it. I will eat my proverbial hat. I will back off and just say, I made a mistake. I was wrong. I'm not here to grandiose. I'm not here to be an activist. I'm not here for popularity. I'm here to get answers and to help you guys have the answers as well.
Yep.
The most heartening thing I get off my channel is people look at it and go, wow, I didn't know that.
No.
And I'm like, why didn't you? Well, you should know that. And I'm glad now that you do.
Yep. Have you got any more questions, Udahef? Knock yourself out. Find your hardest question while we've got Paul for 5 minutes. Yep.
Questions.
Get it out there, love. So there really isn't any hard evidence at all that connects Martin Bryant to Port Arthur at all that day. And there is the other alternate, well, there is witness statements that have him at other places whilst the actual shooting is going on. So there was people that saw him. The theory is that there was 2 Volvos. Is that correct? How did that?
There were, that's factual. There were
Yes.
2 yellow Volvos. That's not unusual in the fact, being of scientific mind. I say, okay, there were 2 yellow Volvos. One of them was owned by 2 females who had driven onto the Port Arthur historic site. And they were cautioned, look, you better not drive the vehicle because the police might think you were the gunman. There were there'd been a lot of disparate reports about the timeline and the sightings of where Martin Bryant was, what he was doing. I can understand that there could be mistakes made and people get things wrong. But once again, this is why we needed a coronial inquest, an in-depth, logical, methodical, unemotional evaluation of the crime in the minutest detail. And then you would get the answers to that.
And the coroner
who was the naked? Who was the naked woman that was witnessed by the police constables Highland and Whittle running naked, screaming between the buildings at Seascape Cottages? Never been identified who that person was.
Who was the gunman on the roof that the helicopters identified and were denied being able to engage?
Yeah, there's just questions, and I think the thing that bugs me the most is that the media certainly treat it very black and white, and that you just go, well, none of you have interviewed Martin in the 30 years he's been incarcerated. None of you have access to the hard evidence that's been locked down. None of you have interviewed Graham Collier and Jim Laycock, the people that knew, or Jim knew Martin Bryant, said it wasn't him on the day. And yet they have this cold-hearted, no, he's the man, and he's the poster boy for evil. And you go, well, you haven't even spoken to him. You haven't got access to the evidence.
And nobody has spoken to him. Everyone's been denied access. Everyone.
Very few. He does get some visitors, apparently, but I've tried on multiple occasions. And my first letter to get Martin to nominate me was seized as a risk to prison security. They have it on good authority that letters to Martin are binned. He doesn't get to see them, and then the prison says, oh, well, he doesn't want to see you. You go, well, how do we know that? So, I've tried again. I sent a letter recently for a nomination letter. Nothing. I don't know whether he received it. I don't know what's happened to it. It's just, this is Australia. It's not North Korea.
Yeah.
We should have some level of transparency. I'm not here to upset the people, particularly on this day. Of course not. But, the people that I know that were involved, they're upset because they didn't get the answers and they were denied their chance to have their say in court.
And that includes victims.
Where's the justice in that?
Yeah.
There are people that want answers, and Port Arthur punched a hole through the whole of Australia. I bleed for the people at Tasmania, but all of us were affected by this tragedy. And I think we should have the ability to ask questions and to be provided in a respectful manner with answers to some of those questions.
100%.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
No. All right, Paul, we've got 1 minute 30. So I will thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us and taking the time out of your day today to spend with us. And hopefully we've educated a few people, or we've opened some people's eyes at the very, very least. I will continue on after this because there is a couple of questions I would like to address as well. But yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have all of Paul's details and how to find him, where to find him, and all the information in the description box. And I will also stream that. I've got them on my screen now. So do go and have a look at the WASP files. There is a myriad of information there for everyone. Just broaden your horizons, just for your own information. Thank you so much for joining us.
Please, everyone, just remember that today is a very special day. Correct. I hate tokenism, but it is a time to remember and think about the people that were taken from us and ones that were left behind. behind.
The 35 innocent
important.
lives, yes, and their families and their friends and everyone that knocks on from that tragedy. All right. Thanks once again, Paul. It's been absolutely fabulous having you here. I'll speak to you shortly. Bye.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Wow. Very, very knowledgeable man in that genre, so to speak. I don't know anyone who has actually spent that amount of time actually researching and delving for the answers. And I did see, where are we? Who did I see pop in? Where is she? There it is. Hello. Top of the morning, mates. It's your warrior woman. Oh, and I've got my lovely little Miss Claudia up here, who is the princess. Yeah, who's in a lot of trouble at the moment. Oh, dear. All right, so what have we got here? The only other question, is it a cop-out to say you're just asking questions? Because it doesn't sound to most people like you just ask, well, what is it? Okay. Well, no, I don't think there were accusations at all. Well, it was just showing that there is more information out there than what we have been told, basically. While it takes beyond a reasonable doubt to convict someone of a crime, you also need to prove your assertion is true. Correct, you do. But that goes both ways. Does it not? You are innocent until proven guilty. And there is not one shred of evidence that connects Martin to Port Arthur. And if it were me or one of my family members that was actually being charged with this, I would want more than a coerced and proven coerced guilty plea 5.5 months down the track. But that's just me. Wouldn't it have been good if back then everyone, yeah, well, that's what, as I said before, we didn't have the access to the level of research and at our fingertips that we do now. And back then, and what annoyed me too was because it in Australia, 60 Minutes, the actual investigative journalists that presented this initially were very well, I had held them in high regard. It was Mike Willisey, was like the reporter of the time. And for him to come out and say what he did, and the link to the 60 Minutes media thing, the TV thing, is in the description box if you want to watch it. That was done in 1996 back then. And he was very well revered. So you took it as gospel. Anything that came out of his mouth was gospel. And I, for 27 years of the last 30, knew no different until I started looking in and asking questions myself. So I don't have the answers, but I do have more questions, basically, that I think deserve to be answered if you're going to be convicted for 35 consecutive life sentences. Just saying. And I don't know anything about Sandy Hook either, so that one was probably a good one for Paul. Who else have we got? What was that? Who's throwing a turtle? What are the links you're sending, sweetheart? What are they? I don't know. Oh, okay. That's the one. I've actually got it. Where is it? There you go. There's the link. But there is also a lot of other information that I have put in the description box just on stuff that I've found, research or what have you, that you can all just check out for your own information if you wanted to go there. Okay, cabbage, onions, potatoes, and a lot of flowers and shrubs. Okay. That's lovely. I would like to have seen footage of Martin's video camera. Oh, yes, there was a video camera in the Broadwater Cafe. Yes, that's right. Yes. And just the whole fact that Graham Collier, who was shot by the gunman through the neck, and played dead, and watched the gunman enter the cafe and then watched him open fire, to this day still is 100% adamant that it was not Martin Bryant. In fact, of the 200 people in the Broadwater Cafe at the day, 2 of them identified Martin. And in saying that, whilst the actual siege at Seascape was in progress at like 7:45 that night, a photo of Martin Bryant had been stolen from his property and released to the media, and his mother was being interviewed at the time of the siege. And that photo was before any charges, before any interviews, before anything. That photo was put out there on the front page of the Mercury paper in Tasmania with him as the shooter. Now, if that's not prejudicial and can cause, what's it called, confirmation bias, look, it comes down to basic human rights, and we all deserve them at the end of the day. Simple as that. It's like you don't get Reg and Miranda rights. It's fruit from the poisonous tree. It's a basic human right. They're there for a reason. It sort of jumped around a bit, Sweater, because we had some IT issues. Paul couldn't join through StreamYard. He had to come through Zoom. I didn't have Zoom. I had to download it and learn it in a day. And the Zoom feed went for 45 minutes, and I had to set up another one. So we did 3 of them. So it's a bit disjointed. I apologize. I should have just pre-recorded it and then done it. But I really wanted him to answer questions because he does know an enormous amount of detail of what's going on. Okay, list them, darling. Tell me. Hard evidence, not speculation, hard evidence that he was at Port Arthur, not the Seascape. We know he was at Seascape because he was arrested there. Yes. Did you want to come up and have a chat, miss? You've got the link. We can go through that, because Steve and Graham, the money that Martin inherited from Helen Harvey, and this also goes to motive. Okay, he'd just become enormously wealthy, owned multiple properties, had been traveling, everywhere, has a girlfriend. Why? What's so bad with your life? What's wrong with your life that you want to go down to Port Arthur, where you used to go quite frequently with Helen for morning teas and afternoon teas? They all knew him down there. Makes no sense. None. And the money that, the government, once he got that inheritance, he was actually deemed incapable of managing his finances. That's how intellectually disabled he was. But he could pull off this huge, big array of, and still be the biggest mass murderer in Australia today. today. You're not backstage. I can't see you. You haven't popped up in the bottom. I think you've joined the other link, Dal, the backstage the backstage meeting, not the live one. I'll send you the link again now. You knob jockey. All right. Copy. Oops, wrong one. I can get out of Zoom now. Go away. Too many tabs open. Gmail. Give me 1 second. I'll just send this to Tanya because she did the she chased the money. She followed the money. Oop. Yeah, you're in the wrong one, sweetheart. Tanya. So stream. Paste. Send. Hey. No, you're in the wrong one. You're in the backstage planning one, not the current one. Okay, that's been sent. All right. So yes, the money. The money was supposed. It was held in trust by the state trustees for Martin because he was deemed unable to manage his finances, and that money was to go to the victims of crime and to the families of the victims in the Port Arthur massacre, and there is no evidence that that actually occurred. I think Stephen got, I think it was $70,000. That's it. Oh, there she is. You enter the backstage link.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody.
Howdy ho, neighbor. What was the name of the? Did you see my brain fart?
Yeah, your brain farted.
Yeah, when I was trying to explain where the other inheritors were, what that.
Well,
it was from the
float of the company, yeah, from Tattlesall's. But anyway, the other thing I had there too is with most of this evidence that people don't realise, like the DNA evidence, the video camera, etc., is all locked up for another 50 years. And why the Australian government did that? Why?
Yeah,
really hard. That's what we need to know. Why don't they release that evidence so that we can see it?
All right,
but anyway, let's have a look at the money.
No, he was never caught on camera at all, Urhef. There is one grainy image of a blonde-haired person with a long black coat, light blue jeans, and a light-coloured top from behind. There is no front one, but even those clothing do not match what Martin was wearing at Seascape Cottages. Completely different. Eyewitnesses saw him doing that. No, I just
two out of how many? Two.
2 out of 200, and one. There's like 6 victims that actually state 6 victims that were shot in the cafe state that it was not him. Not even.
What was that presentation that they did up in Inverell in New South Wales? There was a DVD recorded.
There is, if you actually go through, hang on, Tan, if you go through the timeline, there is about 6 different things that happened between Port Arthur and Seascape. 2 yellow Volvos that were actually involved, and 2 completely different areas of Tasmania buying stupid things like a bottle of tomato sauce and this and that. There's actually witness sightings and statements that Martin was seen at a beach. I've got it in the details, but there was a beach sighting of him surfing prior to the shooting. There is the 2 Volvos, both with surfboards on, one at Port Arthur, one at the beach. Then there is multiple things that, it's all in the paperwork. He
purchased petrol is not proof, Edith.
He was apprehended whilst on fire coming from Seascape.
Correct.
Yes. Was it Seascape? completely.
But that wasn't at Port Arthur.
No. And I don't believe that he was aware of what he was doing. If you listen to the actual the hostage negotiator, Martin's making them teas and coffees and doing this and that and calling himself Jamie. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you know, and you can hear gunfire in the background. Like, he's supposed to be a shooter, but he's on the phone to the hostage negotiator, and there is shots being fired in the background that you can hear. He confessed. Yeah, and we explained how he confessed.
7 months in jail. 7 months.
His mother,
7 months.
His mother was told to go in and tell him that she would not see him or her sister if he didn't. She's written it in statements. She's written a book about it. She's been interviewed about it. So, sorry, that's not beyond a reasonable doubt. Not even close. Mm-mm.
And I mean, too, she wasn't the smartest tool in the shed, neither was his father. And they wouldn't have known about getting lawyers and all that kind of stuff to, you know, a different lawyer, that this one wasn't acting correctly. They wouldn't have understood about the guardian ad litem that he should have had there. They wouldn't have understood this information.
Yep.
So anyway, let's talk about the money.
Yes.
So what money did Martin have? I'm not going to pull up any evidence tonight. We can maybe put a link or put on Discord or something like that, the information that I've got, Jode, that I used last time, or they can go back and look at the last video.
I can absolutely link it. I'll put it in the description box. I'll find it now whilst you... Do you want me to bring it up? Or?
No, we don't need to bring it up. It's a lot of reading and we don't really need to know that on this date when we're remembering the people. And one of the things about the money is, what about the people?
Yes.
And let's have a look at that. Yeah, let's have a look at that. So, okay, Martin inherited approximately $250,000 from his father passing, from his superannuation. The mother inherited the house.
Hang on one sec. Can I just say something?
Yep.
Your microphone sounds beautiful. It's brilliant.
That's my new iPhone 17e, actually. I'm sitting outside.
Really?
Yes.
That is just crisp, clear, beautiful. Sorry.
There you go. The old iPhone 17e, brand new, Pro Max. There we go. I've nearly got everything set up. Okay, so let's have a look at the money. As I said, he inherited approximately $250,000 from his father's super and the insurance built into that superannuation, which I don't know what you guys call it over there, but it's, you know, your pension kind of thing that your employers contributed to, and you may have contributed to over the years as well. And you can also take out certain kinds of insurance within your super. So that is why it was so much, because his father wouldn't have got that much super gathered together over the years, because as we know, employer super only became law that they had to do it from the year 2000. So he wouldn't have had super.
Was he covered for insurance with suicide?
You are, after having your life insurance policy for 13 months, you are covered for suicide.
Wow.
Yeah, so you've got to own a policy for more than 13 months to be covered for suicide.
You know,
that's probably 99% of the policies in Australia that are like that.
Do you know how long he had that policy for?
Oh, years. It was in his super for years, yeah.
So
anyway, and the mother got all the personal effects, the house, etc., etc. So there's $250,000, and back then in 1996, that was still a shit ton of money. You could have bought a house, everything for that, yeah. Okay, so now what did he get from the lovely Helen Harvey? Well, as we know, she was one of the many Tattersalls heirs. When the company floated on the Australian Stock Exchange and they had to work out what the hell they're going to do with all these original people, because there was thousands involved, because the original person that set up Tats, because Tasmania was the only state that would let you gamble, and he set up Melbourne Cup sweeps, and then, you know, everything else that came after that, all the gambling. I mean, Jesus, now in Australia you can bet on 2 raindrops going down a window within 5 minutes of them finishing. You can bet on the footy at 3/4 time, for God's sake. It's ridiculous, you know what I mean? But you can't play online poker for money. It's just bullshit. But I won't go there. That's a totally different story that gets my gripe. So what happened when the Tattersalls floated? The blood direct heirs of the man that the original owner had given everything to, David Adams, I believe was his name. Yes, then they had what was called an income bearing share. Now, when you have a company, you can have shares that are general shareholders, like we go buy Coles Myer shares or whatever, and they're just general shareholders. So they're entitled to their portion of the capital of the company if it goes down, as well as the dividends or income from the company. What these other shareholders, not 1,960 of them, the direct descendants of, what was his name that I just said a minute ago? That guy, David Adams. They got was only an income stream share, and it was related only to the blood direct descendants of these people. So
Yes.
what happened was Helen was getting approximately $250,000 to $300,000 a year,
Yes.
maybe a little bit more.
And that's what that income stream is, what I think Paul was referring to.
Correct. So that's what she was getting every year. And when she died, she left everything to Martin. So that meant he got a lot of crappy cars, because they used to go and buy not a brand new, but a
Yes.
secondhand car every second week. He got the farm that they had bought after in her house in Newport.
Hey, Brian.
Hi,
Sorry.
Bri. The house in Newport that she had, which was a beautiful house, it was her parents' house, and it was handed down to her after her mother died. But it was worth quite a bit of money. So somewhere I did check on that, Jod. It was more around $700,000, $800,000, that house, because prices in Tasmania had just starting to move, and it was a big house, big block of land. Like, you could probably build 40 units on it. So for a developer, it was probably worth a fair bit of money.
It was derelict and filthy, and
Oh yes, you'd knock down the house for sure. But why they bought the farm? Well, she bought the farm was because of the 400 goats, pigs, sheep, cats, dogs, birds, whatever else she had living there and crapping all over the place. The council had said, get them out. They've got to go. Or, we're going to do nasty things. We're going to come take all the pets and everything. So she bought this farm. And that was where Martin lived most of the time, actually. He slept in a bedroom at the farm. And where he had his piggy that he'd changed the carpet 4 times so far, because Piggy crapped on the floor, but it was his favourite piggy, and she slept in his room. So that farm, it wasn't a great big farm. It was just a little hobby farm type style thing, so maybe a couple of acres. And that was where all the animals went to live. And Helen's mother and Helen were both taken to hospital not long after that too, before she died, obviously, because the house was so derelict and disgusting. And the mother actually ended up dying. Her mother ended up dying. Her state was that bad.
She fractured hip, and she had numerous wounds and bed sores and pressure wounds and all sorts, because she was so unkempt. And
but she refused medical help in the past. And Helen also had a few issues as well. I believe she had some ulcers and that on her legs and that they wanted to take care of and wouldn't let her out. And I believe Martin and his father in that time went and cleaned that house, did the gardens, did everything, and made it spick and span ready for her to come back home. And I mean, that was big to her as well. So obviously, their friendship, which was only a friendship, that was a big thing for him to do for her, and she valued that, obviously. And so he got that house and he got the farm, but he did not get the income from Tattersalls.
no.
If she had have had a son or a daughter, yes, they would have inherited that income stream. But because she didn't have any descendants that were her direct descendants, then that income stream just disappeared. So as all the Adams descendants, which are some quite famous families in Australia, actually, and some of them got a lot more than she did,
Well, she was the daughter of the mother, wasn't she?
And the father. Oh, yes, the mother was the direct descendant, not the father. Yes, correct. That's why she didn't get the income stream until her mother died.
Yes.
Yes, and I believe, there was a bit of cash in the bank. Obviously, she got some from her mother, but she did waste a lot of money. And, they went on, Martin and her went on quite a few overseas trips, etc. So
Yeah.
she didn't have a lot saved up in the bank by the time she passed away. But yes,
Didn't.
2 properties there. And both those properties were sold after Martin went to jail by the state trustees,
Mhm.
which were the ones that were supposed to be there for him, with his lawyer all the time that weren't there. And they sold them. And all up, that was gathered by the public trustees was $1.2 million roughly, which was a shit ton of money back then. Like
Yeah.
that was so, you'd think you'd live the rest of your life on that amount of money back then. Obviously you wouldn't because of inflation and the way things are now. But, you would have expected so. So all up it was about 1.2 million with no future income streams coming. And
But you invested that.
oh,
know.
yeah, if you invested that, yeah. Because remember back then, I mean, shit, interest rates were friggin' 17% when I bought my first home, that was back then. See, Brian? Yeah, so, interest rates were huge. 17.6%, I remember, was my first home loan back then. So, yes, you would have earned quite a lot of money on it with compounding interest. And if it was managed properly with a bit of an
Correct.
income stream but retaining capital, yeah, that would have certainly probably lasted him a long time. I did something very similar for my in-laws at that time with Ron's retirement money. And, yeah, his wife is still living comfortably on that and a little bit of pension as well.
Sorry, I just realised. Sorry, Penny. You got so many different names. I didn't recognise you. Sorry. It's only that you wrote Idaho that I realised who it was. Sorry, go on.
Oh, okay. Hi, Penny. So, yeah, there wasn't a great deal of money. But, why would someone that could, if he was advised by the State Trustee's Office, his guardian medal items, properly about money, and they appointed a financial advisor, then, yeah, he would have been able to take a nice overseas trip every year and live comfortably for the rest of his life.
Well, he was.
So
he was
he
travelling with his
was.
girlfriend.
That's right.
Yeah, I just don't see how you go from that to killing 35 people.
That's right. Why would you? It's just, okay, it's crazy. What is he crazy? Then if he did do it, I'm not saying he did or didn't do it. I'm just saying if he did do it, right, why? Why? Why would he do it?
And if he didn't do it, there's someone out there that did.
Oh, 100%.
And this is something that Australia had to face this huge thing of like an epic proportion and magnitude. So what lengths would you go to create peace and harmony as a state, as a town?
Look, as we all know, 10 years earlier, the states had a meeting about restricting gun access to people. And Barry Unsworth, I remember, I lived in New South Wales.
Got the document.
I grew up there, and Barry Unsworth, he was the Premier of New South Wales, a bit like your governor of your states.
Hey, Governor.
Well, exactly like it. Hey, Governor, yeah. And he said after those negotiations, which failed miserably, and all the states had to agree on the gun laws,
Tasmania was the only
thing. Tasmania was the only one that said no. And Barry Unsworth, the Premier, said there will have to be a gun massacre in
There'll have to be a
Tasmania before we can get
Correct.
unified gun laws.
Yep.
So, that was, yeah.
I'll put that in the description box, I think, or a link to the DROPBOX.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, not only why would he do this is, how would he even think of it? Like, he had the aptitude of a 10-year-old.
Yes. And then you've got the...
and was it him that really went and bought the guns? They say, yeah, he was the one that went and bought the guns off this man, right? But he'd never seen Martin before. Do you know what I mean? He'd never seen Martin.
Martin doesn't deny it. Martin was the registered owner of that gun. Yes, he never denied that. But
yeah,
the issue is the guns that were received, like there was more than 15 different guns found in the rubble of Seascape. And the two particular guns that were in question, both of them had their what do you call it? The barrel, I suppose, the ignition, where you put the bullet in, where you do the ballistics mark. Both of them had this explosive device put in there, and the actual barrel was blown out, so no ballistics could actually ever be matched.
What about and what about a gun residue test? Where's that?
But like,
the evidence just
how would I know how to do that? That's something that
exactly right. Yeah, but anyway, what was I saying? So I'm not saying whether he did it or didn't do it, but if he did do it, where was his due process? How can he be kept in jail for 7 months?
Yes.
When he pleaded not guilty, okay, I suppose you're on remand to your trial, but then after that long, plead guilty? I mean, are you serious? It just doesn't make sense.
No. But it's been admitted by his own attorney and his mother that was coerced. And so they're right then, effective service of counsel,
Exactly. And sorry.
And then his actual.
So there was that, and this, was he wasn't read his Miranda rights, and that video put out by the police was an absolute joke. It was so disjointed in that you could tell it was multiple days. It just wasn't one day. That shouldn't happen. It doesn't happen. Well, it shouldn't happen. It does happen, I guess. But over multiple days, they kept interviewing him. I mean, they may as well bloody waterboard him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And where was this at Guardian ad litem?
Yeah.
And where's the gun residue tests? Where's the DNA tests from the guns? Even if they couldn't have done them back then, they can now. Do you know what I mean? Not the gun residue test, obviously, but all the rest. And who's it? Those 15 guns? There's no record of him ever buying 15 guns.
No.
No record whatsoever.
Yeah. There's so many anomalies through the whole thing. Like, there was also, Wendy Skur said that she heard gunshots and she actually saw gunshot wounds on victims, that she was triaging. And they're very different to an AR-15 wound. And
no, they were gunshot wounds. She said that American man said it was a gunshot wound. But
and if you hear,
12 gauge.
There's a video of a tourist recording, and you hear the gunshots. They are not AR-15 shots. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's just too many. And I mean, okay, he might have practiced a little bit with his gun. Not much, I believe. He hadn't had it that long. But how do you kill 20 people in 19 seconds?
Yes.
90 seconds, sorry. 90 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And be that accurate?
Yeah.
Come on, I was around guns all my life as a kid, you know what I mean? Up until teenager. Yeah. And I'd use fully automatic and semi-automatic guns. We used to shoot the cactus.
The cactus.
And it was a huge bloody cactus, mate. You should have seen it. It had lots of pieces taken out of it. But I've played with these things. Well, not played. It was very serious, actually. Before they were buried in PVC pipe with the gun by back you think. That's what people did. And this is another problem now too, is that, okay, the reason they wanted these gun laws in is for the 10 years previous to Martin Bryant doing this, or somebody doing this, the Port Arthur Massacre, there was a major killing in Australia. There was Hoddle Street, there was Strathfield, there was the bikies one at McDonald's. There was, a lot. There was one every year where it was a major problem.
Sorry.
That's okay. So there was, a major newsworthy shooting with weapons, but not a lot of those were with semi-automatic or automatic weapons. But we won't go there. And, they really wanted the legislation in and this gun buyback to happen. But what they don't understand is people in Australia aren't stupid, and it's a big country. And you get a bit of PVC pipe wide enough to take barrel, the piece that you put up against your shoulder, what's that called? The stock of the gun and the length of a gun, and you oil it up nicely, wrap it up nicely, and cap it, and you bury it. People find these. Maybe, we could know where some are.
There's a name for them. What are they? Not potato guns.
Oh, the orange guns, yeah, they're pretty cool too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, no, that's when you just make the gun out of PVC pipe and you shove a potato or an orange in it. If anybody wants a lesson, you can look it up on YouTube. Plenty of ones there. Just need a barbecue lighter, PVC pipe with one end cap and an orange or a potato or two. I find,
and a piezo ignition.
oh yeah, we just use cigarette lighter. Or the gas out of a cigarette, that you fill your cigarette lighters with. Yep. That's what we use.
I didn't really get a chance to touch on Seascape, the second part of the the shit. And I couldn't share the screen whilst I had Paul on. So this is just like I think a 7-minute thingy that I rustled up. So have a watch, and if you've got any questions, put them in the chat.
Oh, tell me one thing before you put it in. How far from Seascape was Port Arthur? I'll look that up while we're watching.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'll look that up.
And whilst you do, can you see if you can find all of the sightings between the two of the yellow Volvo and what times they were? Because there's like lots of them. If not, I'll find it. That's okay. Actually, I'll look for that. I'll look for that.
Okay. Rightio. Put that on.
Martin
not up there.
Bryant had some interactions with them.
What?
There's a lot of reports that
not
there's
up
a grudge there. Martin's father, Maurice.
Oh, yeah, it is. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's just me.
Don't scare me up.
Sorry. Kick on.
All right. Can you hear it okay?
Yep.
Firstly, had wanted to purchase some property that the Martins owned, and that he was not given any permission to do that, and that had made him depressed and consequently may have contributed to his suicide many months later. Martin Bryant also, once he'd inherited quite a lot of money, had made apparently an offer to buy the Seascape Cottage and been told, doesn't matter how much money you've got, Martin, we'll never sell it. This is all unsubstantiated. It was put out there to basically explain that the reason why the Martins were killed and their Seascape Cottage was used as the location for the siege that took place after the massacre at the Port Arthur Historic Site. At the beginning of the massacre that occurred on the 28th of April 1996, apparently the Seascape Cottage was the site of the first two murders. This has been reported as evidence that Martin Bryant had attended the Seascape Cottage and shot the two owners and then set the cottage up in preparation for the final siege that would take place after the rest of the assault had taken place at the Port Arthur Historic Site. In terms of the reported incidents at the cottage, we know that the gunman then drove down supposedly along the access route, stopping at various points along the way before ending up at the Port Arthur Historic Site where the mainstay of the shooting took place, before commandeering the gold BMW after shooting the occupants and making his way back to the Seascape Cottage. The BMW was driven onto the Seascape property with a hostage in the boot who had been kidnapped at one of the nearby service stations. That hostage, supposedly, according to police reports, was brought into the Seascape Cottage and handcuffed to the stair rail. Once the aftermath of the Port Arthur shooting had taken place, and the time frame was that they were entering into the later afternoon because the shooting took place at 1:30 p.m, that police had received reports of burning vehicle at Seascape, and that also that the shooter had fired from the side of the road on vehicles. There were two police officers that were the first on the scene at the Seascape Cottage. These were Constables Paul Hyland and Constable Gary Whittle. They approached the Seascape entrance and made witness statements that they had seen the BMW, which was parked on the grounds of the cottage, on fire and emitting smoke, quite a large column of smoke. They were fired upon from an individual or individuals in the cottage and then withdrew to safe vantage points where they still had the ability to observe the property, but at a safer distance rather than being in clear sight of whoever was shooting at them. Very shortly after, a Special Operations Group officer by the name of Andrew Fogarty had attended. They were surprised at how quickly he had arrived on the scene. And there was basically an attempt to block the access roads to prevent any further civilians or vehicles driven by being shot at. Very quickly, the call went out that the gunman who had apparently shot up the Port Arthur historic site, was now laying siege from the Seascape Cottage. So the activities of the police, who had remained sequestered at Turana for something like 6 hours before they attended the shooting scene at Port Arthur, were now converging upon the Seascape Cottage as the potential location for the shooter. There were reports also from some of the oddities from the siege, which once again to this day have never been explained. Both Constables Gary Whittle and Paul Hyland reported a naked, dark-haired, screaming female running between the guest house and the cottage, formed a perimeter around the Seascape Cottage, and basically were very aware of reporting that there was multiple shots being fired from the cottage. The interesting notion of that is that there were police reports initially that there were multiple shooters. There were reports that different firearms were being discharged at different times and from different locations, that lights were being turned off and on. This is when it got darker. I spoke at great length to Terry McCarthy. Terry McCarthy was the police negotiator that was called in to try and make contact with the shooter at the Seascape Cottage. Terry confirmed to me, and he said in witness statements as well, that the conversation he had was with an individual who called himself Jamie. And it was an odd conversation. He said he wasn't acting like someone who had just taken part in a mass shooting. He said the conversation was weird. At one point he said it was like he was reading from a script. There are transcripts of that full conversation. I have some of those. But also there are audio recordings of the telephone conversation between Jamie and Terry McCarthy.
Oh, hello.
It's Terry again. How are you?
I'm fine.
How's things going in there, mate?
Fine, couldn't be better. Just like on a Hawaiian holiday.
Hawaiian holiday?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by that.
I don't know myself, no.
And one of the interesting aspects of that was that whilst Jamie was talking to Terry, he was saying, I'm going to make a cup of tea and some sandwiches for the hostages, and I've got to go because the kettle is squealing downstairs, having an amiable conversation about, in essence, taking care of the needs of the supposed hostages. Remember at this point that Glenn Pearce had been supposedly taken into the cottage and handcuffed to the stair railing. Whilst this conversation was taking place, clearly there were gunshots that are heard in the background.
I'm making up some sandwiches. These people have got salad and some bacon in them.
Right.
And eggs. I'm going to fry up some bacon the next order.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I've got to go because this kettle's squealing downstairs, and I'm making a cup of tea now for the hostages.
There was something like 20 gunshots. These were described and explained away by the police as being coughs in the transcripts. And as you can see by the panel, there are quite a few of these. They were later independently verified to be shots from an SKS semi-automatic rifle. There were reports by some of the Special Operations Group snipers that had taken up positions around the cottage that at one point they could see a blonde-haired male on the roof of the cottage who was stationary, and this occurred whilst there were other shots being heard, that person was literally lying prone on the roof of the cottage. Later there were reports that helicopters that were flying over the Seascape Cottage had been fired upon and were advised to divert away. But some of these snipers had the shooter in their sights. They were asking for permission to engage and were not given that permission. Reports by Special Operations Group sniper Sierra was that he had the shooter in his sights and asked for permission to engage, and apparently the directive came back, do not engage, this has to happen. There was another report from the sniper that they were seeing a silhouetted figure through the mesh screen of one of the doors and had the opportunity to once again engage and neutralise and did not do so. So this occurred into the night. An unusual development was that once night fell, the Special Operations Group, some of which were dressed in black, were encroaching upon the property, and they were spotted by the gunman who was calling himself Jamie in Seascape. And Jamie was saying that he could see them, that he had, in essence, night vision equipment on a rifle that he had. And he could see, there was a conversation where he said, I could see one of your boys coming up on the northeast corner, and I've got this scope, and he's going to shoot your main man.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Jamie. Yourself?
Well, I'm well up till now, in the past few 20 seconds. What I've actually found out, man, is that one of your boys is right outside, north-east, I'd say, with an infrared scope. Can you just ask him to move on?
Oh, we'll do that. We'll do that now.
He's going to shoot, he's going to shoot the main man.
So there's some question as to how the shooter managed to obtain a night vision scoped rifle and why he did not shoot the police. There were other incidences where the communication between Terry McCarthy and Jamie had some interesting observations. Jamie was referring to someone else in the cottage by the name of Rick. Rick has often been the name that has been used to accuse Tasmanian Special Operations Group Michael Rick Dyson, who was a police officer I've spoken to quite regularly in regards to the claims by many that he was the second shooter at the Seascape Cottage, or one of the shooters at Seascape Cottage, a claim which he, of course, vehemently denies, but he was accused of being Rick. Jamie went on to say to Terry McCarthy that he knew Rick well, that he'd shot with Rick, and that he knew Rick's wife. He also mentioned to Terry McCarthy that Rick's wife was high up above your position. And Terry McCarthy had replied, what do you mean by that? I don't know what you mean by that. And he said, you know, in intelligence. At daybreak, the cottage itself caught fire. It was alleged that Martin Bryant, who was calling himself Jamie, had set the cottage on fire. And he had run out initially dressed in black, so there'd been a change of clothing. So the shooter who'd exited the Port Arthur site had been wearing light-coloured pants, white sneakers and a light blue shirt and a dark three-quarter coat. When Martin did actually exit the Seascape Cottage prior to the fire, he was seen dressed in black. Following that, shortly after, an individual ran out dressed in black with blonde hair on fire. His back was on fire. He ran out into the grounds, was seen removing the burning clothing, and basically that was at that point that the Special Operations Group closed in with ballistic shields and arrested the person at gunpoint and held them to the ground. They maced him in the face, and that was reported to be Martin Bryant, and one of the Special Operations Group said, quote, he was grinning and out with the fairies. So Martin Bryant was definitely arrested at the Seascape Cottage. There is some confusion about the reason why he was taking the pseudonym Jamie. During the conversations with Terry McCarthy, Terry was trying to ascertain the identity of the gunman, and the gunman wouldn't tell him. And at some point, Terry McCarthy asked him, well, can you tell us your passport number? And Jamie rattled off the passport number that was Martin Bryant's. He said, I know it so well because I travel quite a lot. And conveniently, Martin Bryant's passport was discovered in the glove box of the yellow Volvo that was abandoned back at the toll booth. Soon after that, Martin's photograph was stolen from his house in Clare Street and very, very quickly, almost miraculously quickly, disseminated to all and sundry. So the police had a visual description of Martin Bryant, and they were able to attend the home of his mother, Carleen, and bring her in for questioning straight away. This is during the siege at Seascape Cottage. After being in car.
Bad pause, bad pause. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when I pause on you?
Yeah, is that what you did? I was wondering what was going on.
No, that was the end of it. No. Sorry, Paul. Oh dear. Now, I did nothing but put my dinner on in that break. So, did you find something?
I found out Seascape is 3 kilometres or 1.6 miles from Port Arthur.
Okay. I do have, let me just find, I do have that timeline. Where is it? Okay. Journey to Port Arthur. There was 4
And they reckon this thing about the 2 Volvos.
Yep.
They reckon that's just confusion.
No, it has actually, that was asked by Paul. I asked Paul myself. And
Yeah.
There is evidence that there was 2. Both of them had the surfboard on them. And there he has got the witness statements and shit in his Dropbox.
Yeah, I'm just saying in the normal media, they're just saying.
Oh, mainstream media, yes.
Yeah, there's confusion between him in the yellow Volvo, and then the gold BMW that he stole.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're saying that, remember there was I don't know which channel did it, a reenactment, basically they did, of Martin Bryant. They found a Volvo 244, which is what it was, in yellow, and strapped a surfboard on the top of her. And they filmed a reenactment at the actual place at Port Arthur of him going there and where he would have went. Yeah, evidently. And evidently the public didn't really like it, neither did the victims. They said it wasn't appropriate.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, a bit off. And they said there might be confusion with that, but yeah.
There is actually, I'm going to get on to Paul's because I was going to use this, so I do have his permission to share it. But on his channel, being the film producer that he is, he did like a trailer of Port Arthur to test the other narrative, to see if people could pick it, basically pick how easily it is to pull the wool over your eyes, basically. So I'm going to share that with you. Un momento, per favore. Where is it? Not that one. Where? For out. No. That one. There we go. I think that's it. Oh. Yes. Okay. So share screen. Move that off. Share. Oh, Claudia, you best. Yeah, see her butt. Little turd. Emptied my tissue box. All right, WASP Files, where are you? What the fuck? Oh, I'll probably have to close down some some shite. Nope. That's what? Fuck. No.
What are you looking for?
All right. So I couldn't find it in my list to share it. All good. Okay. Let's make it in big and all righty. You ready? I want you to watch this and see if you can pick what the narrative is, the alternative story. All right.
Ringing, a professional who was sent in to, in essence, impersonate Martin Bryant. I wanted to show that that could be done by getting an individual and putting a blonde wig on them. To that end, I had two different actors portraying Martin Bryant. One of them was obviously wearing a blonde wig. Virtually nobody picked up that this was a different actor.
That wasn't it. Sorry. It was the one after it, motherfucker. Go back.
Ringing, a professional who was sent in.
All right. So this is Paul Motor's YouTube channel, the WASP Files, if you're looking for it. And he has many videos and stuff on there. He's got the audio recordings, the interviews he's had with victims, the interviews he's had with police, the interviews he's had with family. Okay, this is a policeman, a Victorian policeman who was called down there. Where is it? Is it that one? I thought that was it.
Sent in to, in essence, impersonate Martin Bryant. Yeah. I wanted to show that that could be done by...
What the hell is it?
Which one are you looking for?
It's the actual the trailer that he made.
For what?
There it is, I think. So Paul, when he discovered the alternative narrative, wanted to show people how easy it was to be able to impersonate him.
Somebody.
And so he made a trailer of a movie with two actors, one that was fake and one that was supposedly the real one, and how nobody picked it that there was 2 people. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yep.
But I can't find the actual. Hang on, trailer. That's a short. The movie trailer. Yes, that's the one I was just on. Maybe I didn't wait long enough.
Getting an individual and putting a blonde wig on them. To that end, I had 2 different actors portraying Martin Bryant. One of them was obviously wearing a blonde wig. Virtually nobody picked up that this was a different actor.
Oh, that was in that movie, wasn't it? It was called Natrum?
Nitram. What was that?
Nitram. Was this in that movie called Nitram?
It's a stupid movie. Stupid. And Nitram is Martin
spelled backwards. Yeah.
But it had nothing really to do with. Yeah, shit. Don't bother. What were you saying? You saw something about any of the tributes today from local media?
Of the what? Sorry?
The tributes today from local media?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't 60 Minutes. It was
ABC.
And the other one that I downloaded, hang on, let me just go have a look.
We can't play
YouTube.
all of it, play snippets of it, maybe.
Yeah. I listened to the other one on the way home, actually, from your place. The first one that I had downloaded. That was by ABC News In Depth. It was basically just the survivors just talking, yeah.
Okay. Maybe we should link it in the
yeah. Now, the other one I haven't listened to yet.
Just link them in Discord and I'll put the Discord link up. And
there is quite a few now from all the news stations, etc. Yeah, there is. They're all coming on.
So we don't get copywritten. That's probably the best place to chuck them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's watch this.
Welcome to the WASP Files. Some of this material may be distressing and viewer discretion is advised.
Content. Possibly.
My personal journey on the creation of the WASP Files has been long and hard. As stated before, I've conducted 9 years of exhaustive research into the Port Arthur Massacre. However, my initial intention was not to create a channel exploring the many aspects of the massacre itself. In 2016, as a filmmaker, I had made a decision to consider the option of making a full-length drama feature film about the Port Arthur Massacre. And at the time, the film was intended to be a biopic of Martin Bryant and the circumstances leading up to this black day in our nation's history. So in 2016, I commenced putting together the mechanisms to create that project, talking to people, attempts to raise funding, and of course to research the tragedy. And this is where I came off the rails, because I began to research and dug very, very deeply, as stated, speaking directly to the survivors, the first responders, the police, people that knew Martin Bryant, people that were there on the day. And during that tenure, I discovered that there were a lot of holes in the official story that I couldn't then make a film about with the initial intention. In support of my endeavour to make a full-length drama feature film about the Port Arthur Massacre, I produced a trailer, a teaser trailer, which was to be used for promotional purposes in helping raise money to make the film.
This is brilliant.
However, after the many years of exhaustive research,
How good was that?
Yeah, you couldn't tell which one was which.
No, not
Like,
at all.
if we didn't know, you wouldn't know
Yep.
that they were
And
two different actors.
There's actually go back, Jodi. There is a thing on here that I watched the other night that actually showed. He's got so many different things on here, but it showed the video of the witness that captured the blonde person in the car park coming out of the Broadwater Cafe. Oh yes, the morgue truck. That's another one.
Yes.
Tasmania had it. What was it? 22 body morgue truck. Ordered it specifically just prior.
Yeah, got it just prior to that massacre.
And got used again.
Yeah, they sold it.
They commissioned it, had it made, used it for Port Arthur, and oh no, I don't want that search engine. Sorry. Go back.
John Howard, the Prime Minister at the time, has done a few interviews. He did a 60 Minutes one. And on Today, this morning, evidently, he talked to Carl this morning. Carl from the Today Show. Carl, whatever his name is.
Oh, I don't watch the Today Show, sorry.
So I'll grab a few links and I'll chuck them over to you.
Yeah, no worries. No, I don't want that.
And it's funny, isn't it? 30 years on, they're still trying to change gun laws.
Yeah.
There's stuff in there to, going through Parliament shortly. But I mean, the only people that have really got guns in Australia are farmers because they need them and criminals. Ha ha!
Yeah. I won't play that because that's really graphic. That actually shows inside the Broadwater Cafe. How about the Perfect Patsy? I think that.
Yeah.
The false flag. No. This is the alternative theory as to why they picked Martin as.
When you look at the many weird inconsistencies, anomalies, and strange coincidences of the mainstream narrative, I'm going to ask you all to put the overlay of this alternate narrative over the top of those. Then some of these things do seem to make a little more sense. Let's imagine that the event was a planned false flag event. As to who might have created this, we can only theorise that it might have been shadowy aspects of government, including intelligence agencies, in league with rogue tactical police and possibly the SASR. So the plan is that they have someone chosen that they need to take the fall for something they wish to plan. And the idea is that Martin Bryant is groomed by rogue elements of the police in Tasmania and asked to take part in a counter-terrorism exercise, part of SACPAV. Welcome to the WASP Files. Some of this material may be distressing and viewer discretion is advised. By now, most Australians are very well versed with the mainstream narrative of the Port Arthur Massacre and the convicted perpetrator, Martin Bryant. Over the many years of my investigation into the tragedy and uncovering a multitude of inconsistencies, anomalies, strange coincidences, and unexplained events and unresolved questions, it has led me to question quite deeply the mainstream narrative. Tonight's episode then is going to be a departure from that. I would like to talk about what I will call the alternate narrative of the Port Arthur Massacre, as opposed to Martin Bryant being the sole gunman. I prefer the term alternate narrative as opposed to conspiracy theorist because personally I find that term repugnant. So alternate narrative is simply an exploration of the possibility of a second story to Port Arthur. So I'm going to ask you all to theorise. Let's imagine that the event was a planned false flag event. As to who might have created this, we can only theorise that it might have been shadowy aspects of government, including intelligence agencies, in league with rogue tactical police, and possibly the SASR, with their involvement being from a more military and professional engagement of a very highly trained and ruthless killer. Very much like the John F. Kennedy assassination, if we consider that Martin Bryant is in essence our Lee Harvey Oswald.
One statement, please. I'd like some legal representation. These police officers have not allowed me to have any. I don't know what this is all about. I'm just a patsy.
The appointed and chosen patsy, the person who was set up, who on the surface level of things seems perfectly capable and culpable of carrying out something like the Port Arthur Massacre, until you dig a little deeper into his character and his abilities and his disadvantages to consider whether or not that he was capable of doing this. So we're going to say that Martin Bryant was our chosen patsy, that he was looked at because he was known around the local town of Hobart, an unusual character, certainly socially dysfunctional, with attributes that people would consider to be strange and in some cases aggressive and potentially violent. He was a person that was purportedly of low intellect and limited abilities, and in that case, someone that could be considered to be very gullible and easily led. So Martin Bryant was watched, and perhaps the planning may have begun from when Barry Unsworth was famous for quoting that there will never be uniform gun laws in Australia until there is a massacre in Tasmania. This was the quote that the former New South Wales Premier, had quoted while storming out of a meeting when the federal government was trying to implement uniform gun laws throughout Australia. Also, prior to the Port Arthur Massacre, well-renowned anti-gun advocate Roland Brown also stated there will be a massacre in Tasmania. Perhaps the seed was planted. I've always said that gun control alone is too simple a motive for something as heinous as the Port Arthur Massacre. So if we apply the historical and worldwide global motivations by the less savoury of our human race, they are usually power, money, influence, and control. So let's consider that people of that nature have decided, for whatever reason, to create the false flag of the Port Arthur massacre, using perhaps the Hoddle Street shootings and the Queen Street shootings in Melbourne as precedent cases for something much larger, much more heinous, and much more world engaging, if you like. But they need a patsy. So Martin Bryant, who at some point, despite his perceived fortunes of coming into a lot of money, and he had girlfriends as well, was having a lot of difficulties, very much from when he was a child, being brought up in Tasmania, and was exhibiting signs of problems, serious psychological problems, and possibly some very complex issues such as an Asperger's syndrome and possible schizophrenia. So Martin is chosen, Martin is watched, and at some point Martin becomes quite isolated. The support mechanisms, of which he had very few in his life at the time, were removed from his life. His father had committed suicide, Maurice Bryant, which was a stabilising influence in his life to a great extent. He committed suicide. Martin's relationship with his mother was never very strong. And later on, he formed a very close attachment with the wealthy heiress Helen Harvey. They just hit it off. They had a love of animals and they shared a friendship. It was not an intimate relationship. And despite the issues regarding Martin's reckless behaviour, where he would pull down on the wheel when they were driving their cars and almost cause the car to crash, Martin, by all appearances, seemed to be very fond of Helen until an accident occurred, a head-on collision where she was killed and Martin was fairly badly injured in a car accident. So he lost another good friend in Helen Harvey. We now have a person who has, by accident or other means, inherited quite a lot of money in the tune of over $500,000. He also becomes fairly isolated, aside from having a few girlfriends, and has property and spends a lot of time up at a farm in Copping, and has the house in Clare Street in Newtown, which was provided to him by the heiress Helen Harvey. So Martin is a person who wants to be considered to be of worth, to be well regarded as a sophisticated person, and he, becomes very evident in flaunting his wealth around Tasmania, dressing quite outlandishly, splashing his money around, purchasing things and bragging about some of his purchases, and also trying to befriend people from the point of view of portraying himself as being a wealthy and sophisticated individual. This is a person that needs to see their own worth. There have been some reports from people like Wendy Skua, but we're considering just the notion that at some point he was very noticeable and chosen and watched as being a person who would be a perfect candidate to take the fall for the planned operation of the Port Arthur massacre. This would come initially from some of the local police. So the reports were that Martin was kind of taken under their wing, that he may have been groomed in essence and made to feel that, he was part of, something much larger than himself.
And I think he was going down to Port Arthur that day. From what I've gathered, he used to go with the police a lot. They used to take him down on exercises, right? They used to think he was so important. And no, that's what they've done.
Coincidentally, in the months before Port Arthur, I believe it was something like 5 months, there were SACPAV exercises that took place on the Tasman Peninsula. SACPAV was the Standing Acting Committee on the Prevention Against Violence, which in essence were counter-terrorism exercises carried out by tactical police and support mechanisms from the Australian Defence Force and even possibly the SASR, which are our highly trained professional soldiers. So SACPAV exercises were carried out, in fact, on the Tasman Peninsula in the months before Port Arthur. These exercises usually take place all over Australia. So we know then at that point in time there would have been highly trained individuals working with police in the Tasman area. So the plan is that they have someone chosen that they need to take the fall for something they wish to plan. And the idea is that Martin Bryant is groomed by rogue elements of the police in Tasmania and asked to take part in a counter-terrorism exercise, part of SACPAV. And the idea is that they want him to play the part of the main man, the person who will play the part of Jamie, who is going to lay siege from a bed and breakfast in Tasmania, and that will help the police to conduct an exercise in how to overcome a siege situation in Tasmania involving firearms. He's told to keep this secret. Martin is permitted, of course, to purchase firearms, though he never had a licence. So there was a requirement in 1991 that in Tasmania you did have to have a licence to own firearms and be a fit and proper person. So despite the fact that the police confirmed Martin didn't have a licence, he was able to purchase high-powered firearms. Generally, we know this to be the Colt SP1 or AR-15 223 semi-automatic rifle, which was the main firearm that was used at Port Arthur, and a Daewoo 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun. There were other firearms that were used at Port Arthur, but as we will dig into the alternate narrative, these firearms were not owned by Martin, but were provided to him to assist in the operation. So Martin is in a good place prior to Port Arthur. He has the girlfriend that he's been with for 3 months, Petra Wilmot. They are in love. Petra says that he's gentle and kind and looks after her. He has lots of money. He can travel overseas, which he does extensively, and he purchases some firearms and he owns property. So this is a person you would think is in a pretty good place, despite the fact that he might have some social disadvantages and perhaps some psychological issues. So leading up to the 28th of April, 1996, Martin is given the parameters of the operation in which he's going to take part, an exercise with his colleagues in the police force, one of which we shall refer to as Rick. So the idea is he goes out the night before with Petra. They go to the local night spot and they dance and they come home, they shower together, spend the night together. The next morning, Martin is told to set his alarm early because he's got a task that he has to complete, which is the beginning of his adventure. Petra says that Martin likes action movies, so he's about to begin his own action movie, but he has to keep it secret because he's working with the police. So the next morning, Martin and Petra depart, and Martin is told, right, we need you to bring your Volvo, bring your Colt SP1 and your Daewoo shotgun, and bring them down to what is to be established as, in essence, the headquarters of the beginning of the operation, which is Seascape Cottage, a little bed and breakfast that's not too far from the Port Arthur historical site. Martin is told, come down there in the morning and also make sure you leave your passport in the glove box of the car, which Martin does. So Martin is told to drive down there. He arrives sometime in the morning. And if we skip back a little bit, sometime between the hours of 10:30 and 11 a.m., nearby neighbours to the Seascape Cottage, which is the chosen location for the siege that happens later and the headquarters for the operation, the neighbours report hearing gunshots emanating from the vicinity of the Seascape Cottage. This doesn't alarm them too much because it's a rural area and they know that people have firearms and it's not necessarily out of the ordinary. However, they report gunshots at that time in the morning. Martin arrives at the Seascape Cottage. Waiting for them there are some operatives that to assist him in taking part in the operation. One of these is Rick. The other may be another individual who is unidentified, and that he's told, what you have to do is you're going to be stationed here at Seascape Cottage and you're going to be playing the role of Jamie. He's provided with a script and he's told that when the time comes and you're given the signal, you will be shooting out the window of the cottage with the various firearms that we've set up here around the Seascape Cottage. On one condition, you are not to shoot any police officers. you can shoot at them. And Rick will also be here as well to assist with that, but no police officers can be killed. Martin may ask, where is David and Sally Martin, the owners of the Seascape Cottage? 3 possibilities present themselves. Number 1, they're not there. If they were in fact murdered in the morning prior to Martin Bryant's arrival, then they may have been hidden somewhere in either the guest house or some part of the cottage itself. And all that Martin is told is that the owners of the cottage have agreed to take part in the operation and provided their cottage as the location for the siege. The other possibility is that when Martin arrives, he discovers that the couple have been murdered, which would, of course, be a shock. And if that was the case, he might ask, why have they been killed? And he might be told, this is actually an exercise because we do actually have terrorists on the Tasman Peninsula, and that David and Sally Martin are enemies of the state and had to be eliminated. And that we have sanctioned that, but we still need you here to conduct the rest of the exercise. The third possibility is that Martin is actually permitted to kill the Martins himself under the guise of them being enemies of the state, and that the operation is sanctioned. I personally think the first of these is more likely, that the Martins may have been killed and or kept somewhere in the guest house or somewhere in the cottage, and that Martin has no idea of their whereabouts. This may also explain why, when Constables Paul Hyland and Gary Whittle arrived at the Seascape much later during the siege, both of them tendered witness statements that they saw a naked female running screaming between the guest house and the cottage. The identity of that person has never been determined. So there is every possibility that perhaps that woman was Sally Martin, that she may have been kept in another part of the property, perhaps had escaped from any restrictions that she had and had run screaming, trying to get help. Maybe she was disrobed to keep her from, running and trying to elicit help. But it's one aspect of when you look at the many weird inconsistencies, anomalies, and strange coincidences of the mainstream narrative. If you put the overlay, I'm going to ask you all to put the overlay of this alternate narrative over the top of those, then some of these things do seem to make a little more sense. And that's one example that could explain why there was this unidentified naked female running between the buildings screaming. So Martin is at Seascape. He meets the other operatives there. There may be 2, there may be 3. They have set up Seascape Cottage with additional firearms, most likely owned by Glenn Martin, who is the son of Sally and David. He's no longer there, and the couple have been disposed of. He's provided with his script and told, wait, and when we give you the signal, you will read from your script as required if contacted by phone, and when the time comes, you will engage in a siege with the surrounding police. Remember, Martin's Volvo has been brought to that location along with his firearms and his passport in the glove box. One of the operatives that is at the Seascape Cottage then commandeers Martin Bryant's clothing. And if we recall once again, when Martin had run out from the burning Seascape Cottage at the conclusion of the siege, he was dressed in black, which may or may not suggest that when he arrives at Seascape, he has to dress and pretend that he is a special operations group operative. So Martin's clothing is provided to the real gunman. The real gunman, in essence, would be a highly trained individual and most likely a psychopath with compassion for no human life whatsoever. This person would most likely have been SASR or ex-SASR, or perhaps a private military security contract. A very highly trained, dangerous, ruthless, and psychopathic individual who has some appearances to Martin. This person takes Martin's clothing, he takes Martin's car and Martin's guns, He dons a blonde wig and then makes his way down to Port Arthur. The first stage of his operation is to leave an identifying trace of breadcrumbs behind him. Weird events, strange anomalies like buying a bottle of tomato sauce at the local supermarket and paying small change so that people notice him, carrying a large bag, suspicious activity, stopping at service stations, purchasing fuel for the Volvo. Remember too that when the Volvo was discovered, there were fuel containers and firelighters in there as well. So the ringing, if you like, basically makes his way down to Port Arthur and creates a number of distractions, if you like, and noticeable events that people note, they comment on and give witness on later on. This person is armed with enough information about Martin Bryant to realistically pass as Martin Bryant. However, once again, with the mainstream narrative, there are some holes, because a lot of the people that did know Martin Bryant, who initially witnessed the shooter, said that they didn't recognise that person as being Martin Bryant. One of these was the farmer, Roger Lana, who had some knowledge of Martin. And when Martin pulled up in his driveway on the way down to Port Arthur, his statement was that he didn't initially recognise him to be Martin Bryant. They then engaged in some conversation, which I guess satisfied him that it may have been Martin Bryant. What's very important next is the operational plan and the initial target, which was not the Port Arthur historical site. This is evidenced by the shooter stopping to help two young ladies, two tourists whose car had broken down by the side of the road. Martin was not known for his mechanical aptitude himself, yet this person was able to get their car running by fixing a loose wire. He also purchased a bag of marijuana from the girls for $50, which they were amused at because they had the feeling that if the person was a seasoned smoker, they would know that $50 was way too much to pay for the amount of marijuana they sold. But
yeah, you can get, what is it, a quarter of an ounce for $80.
nevertheless, the person handed over $50 and purchased the marijuana. They noticed the surfboard on the top of Martin's yellow Volvo and ask, "Are you going surfing?" And the reply comes back, "No, I'm going down to get rid of some wasps." Now, this indicates an obvious planting by the gunman for a motive for the attack, which is to eradicate white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, or WASPs. He goes on to say, "You can join me down there and buy me a coffee before driving off." The shooter makes his way down to the Port Arthur historic site, pays the $50 entrance fee, and enters the site. Now, here's where there's an indication that the original target was not, in fact, the Broad Arrow Cafe, but the Bundina ferry that takes tourists across to the Isle of the Dead. The Assistant Police Commissioner on the day, Lupo Prins, reported to the Hobart Mercury on the 31st of December 1996 that the initial target for Martin Bryant was the Bundina ferry across to the Isle of the Dead. The shooter parks down near the water's edge, close to the jetty where the Bundina alights for the Isle of the Dead. He doesn't park in the car park next to the Broad Arrow Cafe, which is in close proximity to his vehicle, if that was the intended target. Ian Kingston, who's the security manager and traffic controller on the day, remonstrates with the shooter and says, "You can't park down here. We need this space for the buses." Disgruntled, the shooter drives off and Ian Kingston goes on about his duties. But when he looks back, he notices that once again, the yellow Volvo has been parked down near the water's edge, close to the jetty where the ferry alights for the Isle of the Dead. Now, the Isle of the Dead, as we know, is a little island, a historical gravesite that's just off the foreshore of the Port Arthur historical site. It's accessible only by the ferry. So in order to get rid of wasps on the Isle of the Dead, the plan is that the shooter will make their way down there, join the ferry with the other tourists, make their way across to the Isle of the Dead, and that is the intended target for the shooter. This has significant impact for a number of reasons. Reports were that in addition to local tourists, there was something like 80 US tourists on that ferry that day that were making their way across to the Isle of the Dead. If we consider the notion of the Isle of the Dead itself, there are no cameras on the island. It's not accessible to the public other than by the ferry. It's an isolated environment in many ways. Anyone witnessing an assault on the Isle of the Dead or the ferry itself, all they would witness would be hearing gunshots and seeing whatever commotion was happening at a distance. There would be very few witnesses, eyewitnesses, to identify exactly what took place on that island. It's the perfect ambush point. The notion that there could have been 80 US tourists, it goes without saying that given the ongoing debate about gun control in the United States, the ramifications of 80 US tourists being killed would have been a much higher body count than that was achieved at the Broad Arrow Cafe and the Port Arthur Historical Site, would have gone global and certainly would have had huge ramifications for gun control in the United States. So that was the stage of the operation, was to create the breadcrumbs, make enough noticeable disruptions that people notice a person who is perceived to be Martin Bryant with the long blonde hair, the dark long coat, making their way down to the Port Arthur Historical Site. The shooter parks Martin's Volvo down near the water's edge. He asks the security manager and traffic controller, Ian Kingston, if he could park down there, and is told, no, you can't, we need that space for the buses. Ian continues on with his duties, and the shooter parks down to the water's edge anyway, because he needs to get onto the ferry. This is where the operation has run awry. Now, we have to consider at all this time, Martin Bryant, unknowingly, is situated at Seascape Cottage. He has no concept of any other aspect of the perceived counter-terrorism exercise other than that he's going to be holding siege at the Seascape Cottage. However, there are much greater agendas and plans at play. So the gunman has, remember, petrol and firelighters in Martin's Volvo. The plan is to get onto the ferry and join the perhaps 100 or so people who are making their way across to the Isle of the Dead. At some point, they may have had to elicit an emergency disembarkation because the ferry could have been set on fire. This would have forced everyone to escape from the ferry onto the Isle of the Dead. Once on that isle, there would be nowhere to escape to. The waters surrounding the Isle of the Dead, the Tasmanian waters, were freezing. And if we have elderly people and children, very unlikely that they would be able to survive if they tried to escape by jumping in the water. This was evident during the Norway shooting that occurred on November the 22nd. Victims were trying to escape a gunman who had trapped them on an island, and they too jumped into the water, and some of them drowned. They had nowhere to go. So that's the plan. Also, consider the fact that on the island, if there was no access, immediate access by police, if the ferry had been burnt into the ocean, you've got the gunman on the island, you've got a much...
A bit too many ifs going on there, I think.
I just like Liz.
You know, we put him in a rocket ship and send him to the moon.
Yeah, we've listened to him drill on for long enough. That's enough.
Yeah, just take them. That one's just going a little bit too far.
Yeah, my dinner just cooked. Hot. So basically, what he's doing is that he's found all this stuff out, like through, because his initially he went to produce a movie about Port Arthur. It's taken off, and it was part of him wanting to tell the correct story, the truth behind what happened. In his research to produce this movie is where he
They can hear me.
stumbled upon. Are you right there? Oh. Is where he stumbled upon all these questions that he didn't have any answers to. So he dug deeper and deeper and deeper. And 10 years later, he still hasn't made the movie because he still hasn't got the fucking answers. That's why. So
Yeah, but the answers are all put away for us not to look at for 50 years.
The answers that what he is, the narrative that he's putting forward now is based on the stuff that he's found, and he's putting up the evidence on the screen of it. Like, it's based on whether it be statements, transcripts, court documents, whatever. That's what he's basing the story off. It's not just pulled out of his ass. He's got the evidence to back up the things that the poignant things actually exist or don't exist, so to speak. So there is so many issues throughout the entire timeline.
Yeah, the problem is there's just too many questions.
Correct,
like,
And
I mean, the one that I was looking at, where is the money? Public trustees collected 1.2 million.
Let's go. Didn't go to the victims.
No.
And
there's that DVD. I'll get a link to that DVD that was produced in Inverell in New South Wales, where some of the victims, including, what's her name, Wendy, was the triage nurse, was she?
Wendy? She was
Wendy,
employed. Yes. She was employed as she had two job descriptions. One was a tour guide operator, and the other one was basically
first aid officer.
Yes,
basically.
yes. So
yeah,
luckily she was there because she was first on the scene. She was about to go on to her next tour guide, and so she just got out the back door when the shooter started firing in broad arrow. So she was first on scene pretty much, and she actually toured Australia.
Yeah.
Police officer Terry McGowan professing was innocent, basically, and telling her story about what she saw and what does she have, like, what do victims have to gain? Someone who's shot in the neck, what does he have to gain by saying it wasn't him?
Yeah, well, that's right. And what does she gain from it?
He has never come out publicly. He's never done it. Well, he's interviewed with Paul, but he's not like made money off his testimony. He's not, made a big deal out of it. He's not asked for anything. He's just stated he didn't get a chance to tell his story or tell what happened to him in a trial. Yeah? In a court of law,
exactly.
which we are entitled to have. And so none of it was able to have been brought up. Because
here we go, this DVD, I've found it. It's at Veratus Books. Andrew McGregor and on Port Arthur. And it was in Inverell. It was a forum in 2001, and it was the first time Wendy Sker and Andrew had spoken publicly about Port Arthur.
Oh, yes, I've seen that. They actually got I think they got heckled out the front when they were going in.
Did they?
I think. No, that was in Melbourne. Sorry, it was in Melbourne. Yeah. Yeah, she did. Yep. So I don't know.
That's pretty disgusting.
I don't understand.
But in that, evidently, they do say that, that it wasn't Martin.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all on that.
Yeah. There's the link to look at the book. I mean, in the chat there, if you want to have a look at that book, at that DVD, sorry, at that DVD.
Oh, it's actually, it's a DVD.
You can buy it.
Really?
Yeah. So it was when they were doing a tour in Australia talking about Port Arthur, and it happened to be the one at Inverell, which is in New South Wales.
Inverell. Why is that name familiar?
No, it's a shithole. I mean, I didn't say that. It's not a shithole. It's a nice place.
Is there sheep farms up there? Like big sheep
Yeah,
farms?
yeah. It's just north of Tamworth.
Oh my
So you go
God. I know.
Tamworth, Armidale, Gora, Inverell, friggin' to go up the back way to through Casino, Lismore to get to Byron Bay and that.
I know people that owned a massive sheep station in Inverell that moved to next door to me.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. What was their names?
Bah.
Yeah. Oh Lord, what was her name? Julie,
Mr.
the
and Mrs.
Denman.
Bah.
Denman. Tim and Faye Denman.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Now I actually have. Look at that. You can buy it. You can buy that disc.
Correct.
For $10.
$10.
$10.
See, that should give us commission. I want commission from Apple for advertising the Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max.
Yeah.
You
There
can
is
get
actually
commission off the DVD.
There is a few different books that have been written about this, and they're all on his Dropbox on his channel.
Oh, right, okay.
It's all there. Like you can access whatever you need and look for yourself. Like there's no there's nothing hidden there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well,
anyway, I'm going to say bye-bye, everybody. So
I think we have more than enough time.
Yes. So I just hope you like my little piece about where all the money went and how much he actually had, and that no, it wasn't an ongoing money stream for him, which would have been nice for him.
It was nice to be back on stage for a bit.
Yes, exactly. Good to see you all, Teresia, Udahev, Bri.
All right. Thank you. Mwah.
And yeah, we'll throw those documents that support what I said on Discord.
Yeah, yep, no problem. And as I said, there is a multitude of information links in the description box. Don't forget to hit that like.
Already done that?
And KPTM, I gave you my mobile number because I know you don't have an email address.
Only me going, Udahev.
Pardon?
Oh, Udahev was saying goodbye to both of us. I said, only me going. Bye-bye.
Sign off in a sec. Yes. Oh, wow. Who did that? That's big enough. That's it. Ooh. Okay. What was I saying? Brain fart. I feel like it's like 2:30 in the morning because like I've been streaming for 3 hours and normally it's 2:30 in the morning at this stage, but it's only 10:30 at night now. It's like, woohoo! It's bizarre. Oh dear. So I was halfway through doing a tribute today for the 35 victims, and then I had this IT crisis with Zoom, and yeah, so I'll be finishing that off, and then I'll be posting that after this. Just a little tribute to the victims. But at the end of the day, it was a massive, massive tragedy, massive loss of lives, pointless loss of life of innocent men, women, and children, and it has shaped Australia in a way that we'll never get over, and nor should we. But if nothing else, it probably highlights the need and the respect, the bare essentials that are basic human rights need to be upheld, should be upheld at all times. Otherwise, what are we? Where are we? You know, there are rights for a reason, and they're not worth giving up for nothing. And this poor, in my opinion, this poor intellectually disabled individual had no idea what was coming, didn't see it coming, and still doesn't know what's going on. So there's that. All right. Hasta la vista, bitches. If you can't be good at it, and be nice to your mum. She loves you. Okay? Bye.